What's up, everybody? Huang Zero here, and today we have a very special tier list for all of you. We have the first ever tier list post-format merge between both Eastern and Western hemispheres. So, joining me today, we have a very special guest. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself really quickly.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Robin, also known as DTCG. Yeah, so basically I started a Twitter content back then when BT1 first started, and then this was during COVID, and ever since then I've been playing Digimon. Initially it was casually. I think right now I'm more of a competitive player, and as you guys know, I'm part of this Uncle's group. Uncle's group was set up just last year in 2024 by Jackie, which is also known as DTCG Review. So we are a bunch of players, or I think in our 30s, older guys. That's why we call ourselves uncle. Uncle, it's a Singapore slang for uncle, basically older people in this case. So we have Brian, we have Mango, we have Sheen, Krova, which recently just topped the third place in Worlds. We have Slicks, and then because of that, we also have what we call a nephew group. Yeah, so we have nephews coming from Benjamin, Shane, and KCH, as well as Paddy, as well as Lock. Yeah, so this is where we are today, and happy to join this video together with Fong to share about our thoughts, or at least my thoughts, in terms of the current meta as we are moving into unification. For post-ban this discussion. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks
Yeah,
again.
yeah, and thank you for that. And to introduce myself to the Eastern audience, because I am hoping that a lot of Eastern players watch this video, right? Since it is the joint unification tier list. My name is Huang Zero. I'm a player that has been playing since the Japanese BT2 format, so like AncientGreymon, Old Force, all of that. And when Digimon first came into North America, I paid a lot of money to not pull an Omnimon, but here we are, right? Because I paid I bought 5 boxes. Every box is like 10 super rares or whatever, and I pulled 0 Omnimon,
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, wow, that's cool. Um,
yeah,
but no, I'm a competitive player. I've been playing for a very long time now, and I'm super excited to be able to discuss kind of what English players are thinking, and I want to share that knowledge with the other side of the world, and hopefully you can do the same for our side of the world, right?
yes, of course.
And so in this video, as you can see on the screen, how I have it set up is I have my tier list set up on the left side of the screen, and then I have Robin's tier list set up on the right side of the screen, so you can see kind of like where we rate certain decks in real time, right? And so we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and ban list victim. So ban list victim obviously being decks that were hit by the ban list and we think are no longer playable. This will not see any success whatsoever. Tier 1, and how we kind of define that were decks that have very strong power ceilings, so decks that can go super crazy combos and everything like that. And also decks with good representation, right? A deck that will consistently be seeing play, but also convert well into topping, right? So if a deck, is is a good deck, like it does crazy combos, but it's not gonna necessarily get a lot of tops, then it may not be tier 1, maybe it'll be tier 2 instead, and then trickling downward, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, the decks progressively less representation, less power, etc., right?
Yep.
Okay, and then so to kick off the video, we're kind of like going through some of the decks that got hit on the ban list, and I guess with that in mind, we can knock Imperialdramon up a little bit, or Imperialdramon, whatever, right? I believe that's everything on the ban list. Kuzuha, right? Taloop. So Taloop, and obviously you guys have played with Taloop a lot longer than we have, right? Because it was, I don't even think we got a tournament with Taloop yet before it was hit by the ban list, actually. So you probably have
Yeah,
a lot more to say about that. But if you want to go ahead first.
sure. I think you guys got a tinge of Tau Loop, just before, because I think right now this deck seems to be not sitting very well, because I think although it has a lot of what I call the Yu-Gi-Oh factor, because you're just going in with a one card combo and then just going down wide, and just swarming your opponent board. So this was played, a lot in BCF last year as well, in 2024. And I think back then the competing deck was actually Purple Hybrid, and as well as LordKnightmon X at the point of time. And during that time, I was playing LordKnightmon X. So, Clarence, also known as Kurova, was testing out with basically the Taloop and how basically Kuzuha Sakuya is one of his favorite deck, and we were just seeing how the Japanese players play. So actually, for context, right, when it comes to deck building or deck lists, we still rely and look a lot on Japanese content, and then from there we kind of refine or tune up, basically to fit the current meta in terms of what we're looking at. So I think Taloop at that point of time was quite consistent in terms of getting to a certain state, but there are times that actually break. And this is in the meta where Purple Hybrid was just swarming everywhere, and it was just every now and then. But against most other decks, it has the power to actually, create a lot of value with just a single card combo. And before that, you can always keep drawing with a lot of the options, and also drawing with the Digitama, the core Digitama. So I think at this point in time, it's kind of like moving, I'll guess in this current meta, a bit lower. For me, I think for the tier that I've placed them in, I placed them in tier 3 actually.
Really interesting. Okay, so you think even with Kusaha being at 1, you think the deck is still playable, huh?
I guess right now I actually put it at, I consider it neat things to figure it out a bit more. So maybe I'll put it down a bit to tier 4, because right now with a lot of other decks, and yes, the Kuzuha engine do relies on that Kuzuha engine a lot, because if not, you are just playing with the normal Sakuya, which is the BT19 Sakuya draw deck, and in this format, I think drawing cards, although as good as it is, it can deck you out quite easily from there. So that's actually something to take note of when looking at Taloop decks.
Yeah, and so I know on our side we've been testing Taloop for quite a bit, because we didn't know what was going to hit on the ban list, right? So we've been practicing the format for quite some time now as well on our end, and we kind of came to the same conclusion, because we were talking about it with Shane, right? That if Ruin Mode got hit, then Taloop would swap to Venus Valder, locking your opponent, right? Didn't expect Bandai to just outright shoot Kusaha. That was very unexpected, but they should, right? And so for us, it's hard for me to imagine a world where people are still opting to play the Kusaha deck when there are so many other decks that are more consistent and don't rely on seeing one-ofs or trying to combo off with subpar pieces and whatnot. And I also feel like a lot of people just won't touch the deck. They look at it, they're like, oh, it got hit by the ban list, and they're just gonna look away from it, right? So
I think a lot of time when cards are being banned, right, the first thing that comes to their mind, like, oh, it's not playable. But I guess there are also some players that might also take a second cut, a step on this to really test this out first. So at this point in time, even with it limited at 1, I felt that there's also some angles where right now you can play Sakuya X,
that's fair.
You can play back the BT 17 Sakuyas as well, although it might not have the same effect as the current Sakuya deck format, but it might work, you see.
That's fair.
We're not sure yet.
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, at the end of the day, you still have your scrambles, you have your ruins, Volders, etc., right? So you still have the core engine of the deck. So I could probably see somebody making it work. But we'll start off the video. We won't be the exact same. I'll be the hater here, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. AncientGreymon / Red Hybrid, right? This is a deck I feel like did a lot better in the Asia format than it did in the English format. And so I'm very curious. Why do you think that deck does better in your format than our format?
Honestly, I don't know about that, but in Asian wise, we tend to prefer simple, straightforward decks, that don't require too much thinking. In fact, I think one of the no-brainer deck to really play is with Red Hybrid, because there's 2 things that you need. You just need a promo Agunimon, just need an Ancient Grey, and you're good to go. So I think there is also a bit of a high roll factor here, because in Asia we are in best of 1 format, right? So there are times that skewed towards people that just high roll you, and this is purely either based on deck building, consistency, or sometimes it could be luck. And Red Hybrid tends to feed people that likes to play that style. Is it? I'm not really good at game, but I know how to high roll you. You know,
Yeah.
I just gonna fly check you on turn 2,
Yeah.
and then next turn I'll go for game. Yeah. So I think there are still this type of players we don't like to think a lot and just want to go for the game as fast as possible, because this is really the game plan, right? And
Yeah.
before, I think it was limited to one for Promo Aguni.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that powerful. It was just
Mm-hmm.
that um it was just so much aggression from the deck that, you know, there are a lot of players that likes to just get things and over and done with.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, right? Like you brought it up, the best of one versus best of three difference, and this is something that like I feel like has been a debate in the community for the longest time now since the game began. Um,
Yep.
this is our perspective, I guess, as Westerners, right? And I know like we haven't really talked about this between East and West players, but I
Mm,
with best of one, I agree, right? It's sometimes it rewards you for playing more simple decks, because you only have one shot, right? You have one game to play every round, and you have to make it work, otherwise you're out. So it rewards having decks that are very streamlined, simple, and also like you said, if you can high roll aggression, then like there's not a lot you can do. If you get that one lucky game off, then your opponent can't do anything about it. And so when we watch, you know, like results between Asia and then English, uh, you know, sometimes decks that perform really well for you guys, they don't perform well at all here in America or in English.
yeah.
So I do think that best of one versus best of three factor definitely plays a large role in it. And I'm curious to
Yeah.
know if Bandai ends up making either us into best of one or you guys best of three, or they just leave it as it is. Very curious to know what they do about that. Um, but now with Promo Aguni to hit to one, where would you put the red hybrid deck?
Honestly, I still think it's playable.
Okay.
Yeah, in the deck, because I think the deck doesn't just rely on Promo Agunimon, you know,
Yeah.
as yes, it's a good opponent. I mean, you open up with Agunimon, you know, back then you are probably, you know, they call it, you know, the God's Child, you know, just going
Hmm.
through everything to your opponent. But in my list, I place it at tier 4 alongside with Tau as well.
Okay.
So yeah,
You
and
you.
I think
Mhm.
back to the format of best of one, best of three. Although we're not, you know, we're not sure how it will pan out to be.
Yeah.
But I guess one thing about BO3 that not to say that I hated it, but I used to be a Pokemon player as well.
Yeah.
It's mentally draining.
It
Yeah, it's
is.
mentally
Hmm.
draining. So there's a lot of, you know, not just skill wise. Now it could be physics as well. You know,
Hmm.
that plays a part. You know, and I think that puts a very stark difference between competitive playing if we were to
Yeah.
move into BO3. And I think in the west side it's 500 over players.
Yeah.
You know, with BO3, it's, to me that sounds really tiring.
It is very tiring. As somebody that
Yeah.
you know consistently plays these tournaments, tournaments can be, you know, 9 rounds. So it's like that's like 10 to 12 hours of playing, and you're constantly using your brain power. Best of three, it is a lot. That's something that I am trying to work on right now this year is my tournament stamina, because I've noticed
Mm,
I get really tired by round five, because by round
yeah.
five you've played upwards of what 15 games already by that point.
Yeah.
Very stressful games, mind you. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so because how many rounds is like Singapore tournaments, for
Um.
example?
Um. So I just today was
Hmm.
the Ultimate Cup Singapore that has
Right.
96 players. So we play a total of 7 rounds,
Okay.
Swiss,
Yeah.
best of one, and
Yeah.
then we have a top 8 cut. So I think total, if you were to make it to top 8, that's another 10 rounds in
Yeah.
total for BO.
Right. Which
Yeah,
is
and
which.
and the
Oh yeah, go on.
timing, which is okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is okay because we started at maybe 11:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So that when 7 rounds of Swiss is done, we're at 3:30.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's very
which is
interesting.
still
Oh, sorry. Go on.
okay. So yeah, which is still okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think it's very interesting is that you have best of one, but you also have top cut for your events.
Yes.
Whereas
Yes.
we anything that's regional and below, for the most part, I know EU sometimes has top cut. But for the most part, we don't have top cut. It's just best of three Swiss, and then whoever is like undefeated by the end of the day, that's your winner.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, like you said, you have seven best of ones in Swiss, and
Mm,
whereas for us, we have more than seven best of ones by possibly round three, right? Because that's
yeah.
three games, 3 rounds, so upwards of 9 games already by round three. So definitely a stark difference in the amount of
Yeah.
stamina that you need for both of those. But
Mm,
for Ancient Greymon or Red Hybrid, I think the deck is probably like still playable without the promo Goonie because like you not Emperor Greymon. I think Emperor Greymon is terrible.
Yeah.
It's just really bad. But like the actual Ancient Greymon itself, I remember back in BT7, we were trying to build a more like towers sort of style of deck, and we were running, for example, Metal Greymon Alteris mode from BT5, I think.
Oh wow.
Or yeah,
Okay.
I think it was 5 and maybe 4. I don't remember. Um, is an old set, very old set, the one that evolved over a level 5 for 1, and we played Rowdy Rocker. But the whole gimmick was like you try to like make a stack as big as possible, you swing out for as many checks, and you omni, right? Which
Yes.
nowadays that is the concept, right? But back in the days we didn't have the same tools we did, now where you just like you make it so much easier. And I built the deck with Chung. I don't know if you know who Chung is, but he's the very first ever world champion for Digimon. Him and I put that deck together, and it was then it became popular for a while. Not because of me, because I'm not as good as Chung. Chung took the deck to top 8. I only got to top 32 with it. But still, I think the deck probably somewhere out there can do something to make it work. And so I think it's probably still tier 4 just because like you can still Ancient Greymon high roll. Like I do agree to that. But it's a deck that historically does decent in English, and then falters off as the format develops.
Yep.
But
Yeah, I do agree. I
yeah.
do agree in that as well.
So I'm interested to see if we can still make it work from an ancient grade perspective. Again, not Emperor. Emperor is bad.
Yeah.
But just like maybe somebody can come up with like some crazy high roll or whatever, and just it'll be okay.
Yeah,
Mhm,
notable mention, I think last year in Taiwan's VCF, there
mhm.
is an ancient grey that plays the birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it splashes that together, and at one point we were contemplating to try out that deck because anything that does with recursion is
Yeah.
something that we always revert, and you don't need to spend too much resources, and you're still able to
Yeah.
go through that power that you require to bash through your opponent's security. So I think that list can still be refined further,
Yeah.
even with the promo Agumon limited to 1. Let's
Mhm.
see what the players can come up with.
Yeah, and I know we call it Angry Birds in the West.
Yeah.
I know that deck made top 32 for EU Nationals, and I think it also made
Oh.
it recently for EU Regionals as well. EU really likes that deck. So
Mhm.
I definitely do agree. I can see a little bit of cooking there. Okay, but Ancient Garurumon, or as we call it, Anga, um,
Yeah.
deck that also got hit, promo Lobo to 1. Deck that was very, very popular in the start of BT17, I know,
Yes.
for the East. And then I know I don't know if it faltered off necessarily for y'all. But for us, it definitely was a very linear deck, and it didn't perform as nearly as well as it did for you guys.
Mm.
So instead of Ancient Garurumon being kind of like that big scary deck, Ancient Garurumon very much so felt like a tier 2 deck in the West. And the best deck in format before the ban list was definitely Numemon. Nume and Imperial and Takemikazuchi, I think, were the 3
Yes.
best decks for us in the West. Ancient Garuru just wasn't, it's just too straightforward.
Yeah. I think during that time, I was also playing Anga, and I think there were two versions that was going on. One is the
Mm-hmm.
blue version,
Yeah.
and the other one was the red-based version.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So initially, I think during the when Ancient Garu was being revealed, everyone was going more of the, I would say, blue-based route.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, straightforward deck, play your Tamers, evolve your Tamers, go to Ancient, bounce one, check one, that's doing 2 checks at one
Yeah.
time, right? And you're able to also retrieve your hybrid bags, play a Tamer. So that play was, to me, it's very straightforward. The
Mm-hmm.
game plan is there. Just get your Tamers, get your hybrids, and just power through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Later on, I think when it comes to consistency, I think that's where the deck starts to shift a bit. I started playing red base as well. I started playing
Mm-hmm.
Masaru base as well.
Yeah.
Basically with the Agumon to have more memory gains or to have rush as well to gain and power through from there. So it also gave us access to a few other options. I think when you have red, yellow, I think I was playing Odin's Breath, just locking your opponent turn after turn with the board to make sure that they don't have outs to you, but rather you are always, playing the security games, right? Trying to get it down to as low as possible and going for the final check from there, because it actually was a hard counter back then
Mm-hmm.
against Yume. And that's why the consistency. That's why it was always topping tournaments.
Yeah.
Straightforward decks, powerful draws. You're always drawing 2-3 cards every turn
Mm-hmm.
as you're going up, and that's why I think people started playing it. But I think as the meta goes down, and even till now,
Mm-hmm.
with promo Lobo being limited, honestly, I don't think it affected the deck a lot, because
Yeah.
I think there was a newer variant which uses analog boy,
Mm-hmm.
where it's about just going to a promo Lobo and then going to Ancient Grey, and then you pull back the memory with analog, because
Mm-hmm.
end of the day itself, you have a lot more, I would say, follow through to an
Yeah.
extent. So I guess the deck still is playable. In fact, I did see one of this deck happening at today's Ultimate Cup.
Yeah. I also saw that on
And
Twitter.
yeah, so it was doing decently well, except just for bricks. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
control bricks,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in BO1 format, it's just brutal when you brick. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't bear to see the game, but I still feel that it is a strong deck and it should
Mm-hmm.
not be underestimated.
Okay.
For me, I'm actually putting it at tier 3.
Okay. Okay. So Anga, when it was popularized in the West, it was primarily red base. I watched a lot of Gary's VODs from
Yep.
the I think it was like Indonesia BCF or whatever. A
Yep.
lot of those VODs, and so I was trying to study like what made this deck so good, because when I was playing versus it in tournament and in testing, it seemed like okay, because the issue I had with Ancient Garuru was that it was very telegraphed what it was going to do, right? Like you always
Yep.
knew
Yep. I
based
do
on the
agree.
amount of memory that you could pinpoint exactly what their play was going to be, and then you could play around it. Blue base,
Yep.
I think was worse than pure red base, because you lost to Chikuri Floodgate, Chikuri Kokua, right? All these like different type
Mm,
of floodgates, much harder because you didn't have Crimson Blaze to beat Nume, right?
correct.
And so I spent a lot of time talking to Slicks, actually. Slicks kind
Mm,
of gave me a lot of advice on how to navigate the matchup for BT17. And I didn't even get to play New Man BT17 because the ban list killed it, which is really unfortunate. Very annoyed. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I definitely would agree that the red base is definitely the better of the bases. And I did see on Twitter, it went, what, X2, I think, in today's event.
Yeah.
Um,
It did pretty well,
yeah.
actually.
So for me, I can't necessarily put it in tier 3 just because it's a deck that hasn't seen any results in a very long time, and it just got hit in the ban list. So I feel like it'd be very weird for me to put it at tier 3. But I do agree it's probably not dead. It's not crippled just yet. So for me, it's tier 4. Just because like it did in fact just go X2, which is pretty nice, and I've seen a lot of people like playing around with it. And Ancient Garuru as a card is still like very solid, so I definitely think there's potential there. Not sure about the analog promo Lobo build anymore. I think that might just be dead because you only have one
Yeah.
promo Lobo, right?
Correct. That's probably it. The
Yeah,
Gaburo build. Yeah.
yeah.
That's out.
Okay,
That's probably out of this list.
yeah. Okay, so Takemikazuchi. Takemikazuchi was a deck that I thought going into the 2.5 was going to be tied for best deck in the format with Purple Hybrid. Obviously, that was before the ban list, and things happen, right? I know Takemikazuchi didn't see a lot of representation at Worlds. I think there's one Takemikazuchi player at Worlds, actually. Um,
Yep.
so very,
And that's
very
Ben. Yeah.
yeah, it was Ben, right? Mr.
Yes, it was Ben.
Benjamin Thaver, very,
Yes.
very, very good player. And so I'm very curious. This is a deck that saw a lot of success across Asia for the longest time. It saw a lot of success here in the West as well. Why do you think that a lot of players chose not to play Takemikazuchi for Worlds, despite being a powerful deck?
Yeah. That's a question that I'm also wondering. I mean, if you look at the just before the wars, right, in
Mm-hmm.
the Japan side, that was quite a lot of Takemika. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was just everywhere because it is a very hard counter to Purple Hybrid.
Yeah.
And I guess in the meta where they're helping you to fill up your trash, Takemikazuchi is just a natural counter to the deck,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think that's where they see. But moving to worse, because it's where BT20
Mm-hmm.
we have access to BT20,
Yeah.
and players actually would take a second step, at understanding, beside Takemikazuchi, right? What also other decks have? Because I
Yeah.
don't most people would think that they will play the deck they are qualified in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that goes to show it's quite true. Like, I mean, as I move into Asia Regional Final, I qualify for Purple High, and because I'm comfortable with Purple High.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I choose Purple High as the deck to play with. But as other players, again here, your affinity with the deck. I think Benjamin has been playing the deck for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, when it first came out, in BT14,
Mm-hmm.
where's the old Takemi,
Yeah, Fenry.
Fenriloogamon.
Fenry.
Yeah, Fenriloogamon build, and then he was playing that, and then when Takemikazuchi came out, it's just so strong. I mean,
Yeah.
the value it gets, sometimes you can just pop off at turn 2, turn 3, and it leaves your opponent with nothing to really counter the deck. I mean, it's beyond control.
Yeah.
And I think at that point in time, and that's why there was a lot of interest building around that. The deck wasn't too expensive. Again, here in Asia, we also look at cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cost is also the cost of getting the cards is also important. Do mind that although Singapore we do have access to cards, Malaysia, but in other countries like Indonesia, Philippines, they might have difficulty accessing these cards. And I think Take wasn't a very expensive deck to build. And as is straightforward game plan. So we always look at straightforward game plan, consistency, and taking games really quickly are always favored by players, because they don't need to think too much. They don't need to guess what your opponent cards, and predict their plays. Rather, you just focus on your gameplay, and that's all.
Yeah.
But following the I'm so disappointed to say that after following the ban list, I think this deck is not playable. This deck is way at the bottom right now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's playable either. I think another factor that potentially meant why it didn't see play at Worlds is also the Royal Knight matchup is very difficult, right? Having
Yes.
the Omeka Omni X combo, I think, kind of just shuts down any attempt to play Takemikazuchi there. And maybe players anticipated more Royal Knights to be at the event. I know there were only 2 Royal Knight players at the entire Worlds. But you don't know that in hindsight, right?
Oh yeah. One more thing as well. I think when moving to Worlds, 2 new. I think I would say RP Red Purple Imperial was also made available, and that cut counters Takemikazuchi.
Yeah, that as well, right? And then we know that that's a popular deck. Which I'm how much is Shadermon worth in your region? Because over in America, it's 90 USD.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I think at one point we were at about 30 to 40 Singapore dollars. But right now we have access to LM05, so it's not that bad.
Okay. Yeah. See, we don't have that. Our Shadermon reprint is you have to play tournament to get the Shadermon reprint, and it's luck based. You have to pull the Shadermon reprint.
Yes. So that was I think even moving through new sets, right? It's about the hype, that content that comes through. We're seeing Japanese players that does Digimon contents, and they're bringing a lot of hype around Red Purple Imperial.
Yeah.
And that's why it shoots up the card, and the value of it. And yeah, although some players, like me, I do have Shoutout and that's why I don't play, RP. But again here it's still a new deck. I mean, players will start to figure out how to counter it along the way.
Yeah.
I think that was also the reason, as they're riding the hype. Also, it's a bit of high roll deck as well. At the end of the day, there's a lot of value coming from it. I think it was one of the popular choices, but Takemika just, I think, straight up lose to that deck.
Yeah. Okay, Mirage. So Mirage, obviously BT11 Mirage got hit to 1. This was a deck that was played for the very longest time. It fell off in EX8, partly because of Medieval Gallantmon, partly because of Wargirl X and Gallant X, both of which are very detrimental to the Mirage. And it did not see a lot of representation at Worlds at all. I think maybe like less than 2 or less people played Mirage at Worlds.
Yep.
But
there's a lot of hate surrounding this cut,
Yeah, but what's interesting is that Mirage, the last EU event before the ban list went into effect, Mirage made top cut. I also saw Mirage randomly. I don't know. I think it was Asia local somewhere, but it all like they brought Mirage with Galaxy style top end, so the Invisimon, the Hexablow, etc. And I saw that, and I was like, oh, maybe this deck isn't like entirely dead. Maybe you just play like mono blue, like training members, sort of style. And I was like, that actually doesn't sound that terrible. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this deck?
Yeah. At that point of time, I think is it from the US side? They came out with the time walk, the loop for the
Yeah.
yeah. I tried that, man. It was fun. It was kind of like polarizing as well. My opponents was like just looking at me play. So I think that time there was a lot of hype, because Mirage being such a good card, I don't know why they made it alternate effect, and that really triggers me.
Yeah.
But I think with all the hate surrounding the card, I'm glad that Bandai did limit it to one. But if you're looking at Mirage right now, I don't think the pure blue engine will work. But again, here it's not totally unplayable. You can still splash it with Hexablow, Invisimon, and I think recently with the Galaxy toolbox engine, right? But I won't classify it as part of the Galaxy package.
No.
If I see Mirage here, I'll probably just looking at the cards that is originally with the Gallantmon, and Gaogamon from there. A lot of people thought that Gaoga would be limited because that card just helps the deck to draw so much more, and it gives more value to Mirage in some sense.
Right.
Then again, I still think that it has a bit of potential. Moving up. Initially, it was in my ban list with him.
Yeah.
But I recently had joined a Tamer beta, and I did had a player playing just Mirage deck, and it wasn't that bad. It felt that it was still okay. So I think for me, Mirage in the current meta is at tier 4 because it still have access to other blue cards as well. Yeah. So it's just a matter of timing the MirageMon that's more important right now.
Yeah, and so for me, like you said, I think there's some things you can do with the Mirage deck, and you still have access to BT16 Galgamon, which is such a powerful card. My issue, I think the format post-ban is just really bad for Mirage now, right? Like, I think I look at the Sakuya matchup, and I'm like, okay, there's not a lot you can do here. You're getting DP minus, you're getting out-pressured. And I look at the Royal Knight matchup, right? And I'm like, okay, well, they're just going to have, like, 5 cards in hand. They're not drawing a whole ton, so you're not getting a lot of value out of your effects. And so I'm looking at these two, because, like, you could argue that Sakuya and, like, Royal Knights are, like, some of the more popular decks, right?
Yep.
And you look at like Gallantmon still in the format, Medieval still popular. You have all these like different things. So even if I think Mirage is like playable, I think the format is very bad for Mirage. So for me, I think I'm gonna put it in ban list victim.
Yeah, I mean we shall see, because right now I think it's just limited to 1. But again, there could be players tinkering around this deck and to make it work.
Yeah.
That's where the beauty of Digimon card game is. There's always deck that surprises you. And then you will need to be in the very reactive state, which is not really good, especially when you're playing competitively.
Yeah, and for me, how I look at Digimon, Digiga is like, it's like the Dota 2 philosophy, where if everything is broken, then nothing is broken. And so there's so many like powerful decks in the game where like you can take anything as long as it's like like reasonably not bad. And you could probably do relatively well with it, right? I know we talked about this briefly, but players like Boris over in Asia, who's consistently making tops with Leopardmon or Green Ranger, and then we have players like Kiki over in English are making tops with decks like Ulforce. So it just goes to show that like if you like a deck enough, and you could probably take it and do well enough, because like the power level for a lot of these decks is still very high.
Yeah. Shoutouts to Boris for being that staunch green player right from the start. It's truly admirable to see a player that is always playing that one color.
Yeah.
And still maintaining very top standards in terms of how he plays.
All right, so Imperialdramon, they had the starter deck Stingmon hit to 1. To me, this deck is still crazy good, right? It's still a very, very powerful deck. Primogenitor is still or what is it called in Asia?
Yeah, Primogenitor.
Oh, it's okay. It's Primogenitor there too. Okay, very, very good card. 2 cost protection that also lets you evolve is crazy. Just in general, it's a very aggressive deck. It's now it's less consistent, but in English format, a lot of English players were actually only playing like 2 of that Stingmon anyway. So you went from two to 1. Yeah, very interesting, right? So for English players at least, we went from like 2 to 1. Sometimes you saw 3, but still, it wasn't like the craziest hit for English. Mirage being out of the format is very significant for us. So in general, I think it's still a very powerful deck in the English format. I think there are a couple of things that will gatekeep it from being super crazy. But for me, I think it's probably going to be one of the best tier 2 decks in the format, where it's like, it's almost tier 1, but there are just like a couple of factors kind of stopping it, primarily being some of your matchup spread in tier 1 is a little bit rough.
Yeah. Same goes for me. Yeah. I think this deck sits comfortably at the tier 2 right now. I think although Stingmon is limited at 1, missing out that 2 draws actually is important. In Asia format, we are playing 4 Stingmons.
Really?
Because every turn, I mean, you need that consistent draw.
Right,
this deck has, you need a lot of, I would say, to see your outs is better.
Yeah.
And any deck that can draw as much as you can, this is really one thing that will be. But we are also seeing some interesting, I would say, ideas around not just having the top line being Imperial Dragon mode or Fighter mode. We are seeing things like Hexablow as well. I mean, with that whole stack of Jogress coming in, that such long stack is very hard to deal with as well. I'm not sure how Invisimon could play in this deck because again here, that card, as we see in Worlds, has so much value in terms of where it's at, and if left unchecked, that card this deck can actually start to stun your board, starts to overwhelm your board, very easily from there.
So,
but right now, yes, still lacking the draw power, which we don't see it as much as in the previous format.
Yeah.
And that's why that's why I think we are ranking it at tier 2.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that Stingmon for you guys was at 4 of, because over here in the West, we saw a lot of players opt for like 2-2 split or like 2-1 split with the BT12 Stingmon, or I think it's BT12, yeah. And we also saw a lot of players playing Leviamon or Ragemon because the Magnamon X top end, right? And so that could still be really strong, right? Magna X Hexablow, and now Invisimon, like you said. So definitely a lot of tools for the Imperial deck, I think, could be really strong. But
yes,
I think that's
something I felt. Something I felt between the Western and the Eastern side is that Western tend to play a lot of tech cards.
Yeah, we play a lot of techs. Yeah,
a lot of tech cards. It's just that I don't want to lose to my worst matchup, or I don't want to lose. I want to be favorable in all matchup, and that's why they try to tech 1 of cards, 2 of cards. But in Asia context, because VO1, we can't afford that 1-2 card to diminish the consistency of the deck, and that's why I think we opt for a more consistent build. In terms of where Imperial Draw is at right now.
Yeah, and it's a very fantastic point. Is that in best of 3 format, you have a little bit more breathing room to find your tech cards, because like again, you draw so much in Digimon, right? Every time you Digivolve, you draw a card, and so because of that, more in this game than a lot of other games, you're more likely to find your 1 of tech cards compared to other games without search power. But like you said, that's because we have that best of 3 breathing room to find the cards. I imagine we would do the same thing in best of 1. We're like, okay, we can't afford to lose trying to find this card, so we're just gonna play for streamlining the process as much as possible.
Yes.
Okay. Sakuyamon. I feel like this is the current talk of the town, right? Everyone is talking about this deck. Kurova took this deck 3rd place Worlds. He beat Onion, our NA representative, who was on our RP Imperial. This is a deck, very, very strong power level. We, over on our side, in my testing group, we have been playing a lot of Sakuya. We even posted a video about it. It was like a 2-hour video or something like that.
Yeah, 2 hours. Sorry, 2 hour long. Yes, very long video.
And so our build, we kind of arrived similar conclusion to Kurova, not the same, obviously, but like we're like kind of the same idea. We're like using like Valder to push a lot of damage and stuff like that, and playing for stack instead of the Taloop. But for us, I agree that Sakuya is a very, very powerful deck, right? No one is going to deny that. You push a lot of damage, you draw a lot, you can generate a lot of tokens. My concern with Sakuya is that I think it's very difficult. It's a very, very hard deck to play. And I think a lot of players, they're going to pick up the deck, they're going to perform very badly with the deck, and then they're going to put the deck down. And so for me, it's hard to imagine the deck converting very well in terms of tops when it's just a lot of players are going to play the deck and not a lot of players are going to do well with the deck. So I contemplated tier 1, tier 2. Tier 1 in terms of power, tier 2 in terms of representation. But I do think the players that are very good with Sakuya will consistently top with Sakuya to where we'll still see consistent representation. So for me, I think it is a tier 1 deck. And I know also in today's Ulti Cup for Singapore, there were 5 Sakuyas in top cut. Granted, it lost at the finals and versus Royal Knights, but still, very, very good deck.
Yeah, in fact, same as me, I'll put it as tier 1. I think shout out to Kurova for bringing this deck to the Worlds. This is one of his favorite deck. Even before Worlds, nobody even, cared about Sakuya. And I think in the place thing that we were discussing, he found, I guess, the secret recipe, to playing Sakuya as well. I guess any card that draws you, that can cheat evolution cost, when it breaks the system, it's just gonna be good.
Yeah.
There's so much value. There's so much value from Rika and the level 3. Each card is always drawing you 2 cards at least, finding you 2 cards. So if you just look at the card value itself, it's already generating so much that you know that if you draw enough or you can figure out a path, you will definitely find a winning strategy to that.
Yeah.
And I do agree to you that, this could seem very appealing to players who wants to get to know Sakuya, but when they start to playing it, it's it can get really hard. I was in that position, and I was trying this deck, for the first time, and I was wondering why I have so many cards in the hand. Which Digimon should I minus DP? Which DP should I minus security? So initially, I think the uptake, when learning about that, there's a very steep learning curve. But I think once you get into the groove of things, it is quite obvious in terms of how Sakuya deck it plays very well into the format. Because first thing first, I'm farming my resources with tamers and options, and this is something that your opponent cannot react to. Your opponent also cannot react to a rune mood. 5k, 10k, 10k being the worst scenario that you can get. You almost can play nothing down there. And with Valdearm being a 0 cost evolution when going from Sakuyamon X, with a Sakuya at the base, it's just so broken. How could you allow this card, which only has a when Digivolve effect, it's not even a DNA Digivolve effect, to allow opponent not to play not to have any on-play effects, and do not allow your opponent to unsuspend. So it locks the board for 1 turn, or even it can go for that, 2 checks. So as Sakuya X going up, you play a scramble, go to Valdearm, re-stands, 2 check, you 2 check again, and then you have the token going for a final check. Easily see this happening at turn 2, turn 3. I've been playing this deck for about 2 weeks right now, and I can share that this deck is sitting right at the top in terms of how much value it's generating, and the thing that your opponent sometimes can't see it coming, because you can go from a level 3 to a level 7 with just 3 to 4 memory, which is just ridiculous. So I just feel that this deck right now, even today in the Ultimate Cup, although there's 5 in the top 8 card, but honestly, when it was in I guess the 3rd and 4th round, top 12, there's easily more than half players playing this deck.
Really?
In the current
Wow.
format. Yes, it's very popular right now.
And you shouted out Kurova. I also want to shout out on the English side of things, Rusty and Weenie, which I can't believe he still made me call him that name. That's crazy. But no, they took a lot of inspiration from the Eastern side of things, and I know they've been testing it a lot. So again, I know they didn't come to the exact same conclusion, but they did a really, really great job. So shout out to them as well for that deck. Moving on, Royal Knight, right? This is the deck that just won the Singapore Ulti Cup. This is the deck that has been doing very well in the Western Hemisphere as well. Royal Knight, to me, it's a very interesting thing, right? Because it's one of the few decks in the game that it breaks the rules of the game, right? It doesn't play to Digivolve. You have this very unique mechanic, and I think the thing that makes a tier 1 deck is it usually has some kind of unfair mechanic, right? It either cheats evolution, it has something crazy, right? And Royal Knights, I mean, it literally breaks the mechanics of the game, but it also loses, generally to 1 floodgate, right? Being the Psychmon, Shouqiaomon, Solarmon, right? Otama. And so it's if you see that floodgate, you can delete the floodgate using Purge Gallant or Purge Alpha, whatever. But it's still hard. It's still a play that you have to set up. You have to see the right pieces at the right time. That's why we see players still on the Masaru or Queen's device to eliminate those floodgates. But still, it's very annoying. So for me, I think Royal Knights. I think it's a tier 1 deck, right? I do think it's a tier 1 deck. I think overall it's better than Sakuya, specifically because I think it's easier to play than Sakuya. And I think a lot of players, they can pick up the Royal Knight deck and they can still do fairly well with the Sakuya. I mean, the Royal Knight deck, whereas if you pick up the Sakuya deck, you're probably not going to do very well if you're not good at it. Granted, it's very close. They're both still very good.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah.
Oh, gone.
Yeah, same for me. I think Royal Knight, just clinched the top spot, in today's Ultimate Cup in Singapore, piloted by Uncle Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, or also known as Briar. Yeah. So he has been playing this deck, for quite some time as well. And then back then, I think when BT13 came out, this was just a very popular deck to play with. Firstly, because it is Royal Knight. Who doesn't like playing Royal Knight? And with all the AAs, linking your deck with all the golden shine to it, and I think this was just a very popular. It also has a very straightforward strategy. I think again here, when you have a very clear game plan, your plays become clean. Your plays becomes better because there are certain steps that you will follow through, and the deck has good strong board control. Yeah, to ensure that it's always making sure that opponent don't have any chance to start attacking your security or start setting up along the way, and right now with Omni X coming into the picture, Omni X is such a great addition to the deck, being able to attack at the end of the turn, giving another Digimon rush, which means that sometimes you do not need to use it to attack. You can hard cast a Crimson Mood when your opponent has enough trash or when you stack up, and just go for the final check from there, which I think it's something that you can't stop. When you can't stop even when you see it coming. Yeah, it used to be more of the Omni play, BD13 Omni play, where it's just to flood the whole boards with rush and just go through. Now you don't even need to go to that extent. Sometimes you could just be ending the ending with Omni X or other cards, besides it to really secure the victory. Although I beg to differ that I think in terms of where Royal Knight is standing between Sakura X, it's kind of like a 50-50. But
yeah,
I'm more Sakura favorite just because Sakura has access to Valder Arm, which shuts down Omega, any on play effects, so you're locking them for one turn, which means that if you're able to set up another time, or you're able to go for the game the next turn, it's gonna be bad. Yeah, but of course, with the Omega sitting in the breeding area or coming out, having access to being able to evolve to Omega X at security of 1, could be something that Sakura X need to play around with.
Yeah,
it's not that difficult, but I think Royal Knight do have quite a few resources if you plan well.
I think another thing is that like a lot of inexperienced players probably will not know how to play around the Omega Omni X combo. So that may like also improve the win rate of the deck. And like I know a lot of the tier 1 decks have ways to play around that combo, which is that's kind of why they're tier 1, right? And so tier 3 decks and below may struggle to deal with that combo, but I know we talked about this briefly, but the Royal Knight versus Sakuya matchup, which again it happened earlier today as well in the finals, and in top 4 as well for that. I wasn't able to watch the tournament, and the video is not available right now, so I'll wait for it to be available later. But for me, how I looked at the matchup, I looked at it as very 50-50. It was very much like who got to their win con first. Like, did Sakuya find Volder first, or did Royal Knights get to Omni first? Because I was resolving the Omni combo like by turn 3, turn 4. And so like if they saw the Volder combo, like you were the game was over. You were probably losing, right? But there sometimes you got the kill before they even got to the Volder combo. So to me, the matchup is very 50-50, slightly leaning Sakuya because you draw more and you find that Volder. But again, like it's just whoever finds the kill shot. I know you argued that Sakuya was a little bit more that Sakuya was more favored in the matchup as well, right?
Yes, I think it's a little bit, but I think as time will tell, we'll see more and more of these matchups. Hopefully we can get a better sensing of. At the end of the day, I don't think which deck is better because they are both really good.
Yeah.
It might boil down to the player's skills at the end of the day.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to say about Royal Knight is that this is a deck I when I was watching Asia results, it was very popular in Asia. And when it came to the West, it was very popular at the start, and then it progressively over time got worse and worse until it didn't see any play anymore in BT13. And I think a very large factor of that was because AncientGreymon was so dominant in the West that it kicked Royal Knights out completely. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. That was back then, right?
Yeah, that was back in BT13. Also, so we
Yes.
are 50 minutes into the video. We still have a lot to cover, so I'm gonna try to speed up
Yeah.
my end, unless you have time to spare. If you do.
Yeah.
Um,
No
but
problem. Yeah.
okay. So Fenrilooga, this Takemikazuchi shot, dead, gone. You know. But Fenrilooga is now back, and Fenrilooga was never a bad deck. It was just there was no reason to play Fenri over Takemikazuchi. But now that Takemikazuchi is dead, we can now talk about Fenri again, right?
Yep.
It's a deck that you still have a lot of combo potential. You can still OTK. You have access to BT16 Dino B. You still have access to like this crazy purple toolbox engine. The new AG Leon is still really good. Overall, I think it's still a very, very powerful deck. I definitely could see somebody do well with this deck. For me, I think the biggest thing that'll stop the Fenriloogamon from doing any better than tier 3, which is where I'm putting it, is a lot of the tier 1 matchups are very hard, which I'm not going to spoil it, but for example, Omni Omeka is a very dangerous combo that I think just prevents this deck from ever being like super, super good. But still, I think it could be something that could be explored.
Yeah, I think it sits at a tier 3 for me as well. Just because I think it has the same old weaknesses. It's weak to security. It's weak to option. If you look at Royal Knight, you're just hitting 15k, 16k every turn. You're probably there. I mean, even with Alliance, I think you're still able to go through. But again, you have the Omeka problem, right? If they are able to, is able to call Omeka, is just gonna wipe your bot out if you don't have any answers to it. So that stops you in the track.
Yeah.
And for Royal Knights, that's where they come back.
Yeah.
And also with, I think Sakuyamon X, you're probably locked. They're probably gonna lock you out on rune mode turn 2, turn 3, and you're kind of just stuck there.
Yeah.
Which goes to show that any decks that can't deal with rune, it's gonna lose out, and it's gonna be played slower than that. Yeah, and I feel that for Fenrir, although during back the good old days it was good, but now it can be better. I'm not sure how players will innovate this. I don't know with the Pulse Moon build whether it works or not. Only time will tell. Yeah.
It's okay. I'll wait until Benjamin posts a Fenrir list, and I'm sure.
Oh, he's switching to Fox right now. So
really.
I hope we continue to innovate on the Fenrilooga build, but I guess Sakura is the clear answer for this matter.
Okay, Leviamon. Leviamon is a deck I feel like doesn't see a lot of play, even though it's crazy good. For me, this is super hot take. I actually think Leviamon is arguably the best deck in the format in terms of power level. I don't think it'll see nearly as much play as a lot of the other tier 1 decks, but I think it has such a good matchup into most of the tier 1 decks. I think it has maybe one bad matchup in the entire format, maybe. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I think Levia is such a powerful deck that if you take Levia to a tournament, you'll probably do very well with it just because of sheer power alone. But I think a lot of people are just very bored of playing Leviamon because it hasn't changed in the longest time, right? So I think a lot of people.
It's like you said, right?
Yeah.
It's like I said, if it works, don't change it.
Yeah.
There's nothing broken with the deck. In fact, I think not much updates for BT20.
No, not at all.
It's still the same old build, and it's still doing strong. But at least for me, I think it sits at the tier 2 right now. In terms of where I look at, yes, I think there are players here that are still playing Levia. But again, I think the consistency, sometimes might get in the way.
Yeah.
You could be not drawing your Goblimon and then that's it. You might not be moving up your line. So although the deck has access to draw, but again, the engine starts only when you have the right pieces.
Yeah.
And that's how things might go the other way if you're not, if you're not in luck.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
I played a lot of Levia because that was my competitive deck for a little while. One thing I will say the deck has is it's very good at making a comeback, right? Like you can be behind a little bit, but then like because you have so much power, it's very easy to catch back up. One of the things that I really like about Leviathan this format is versus the Royal Knight matchup, you're one of the few decks that can, even though if they get rid of the Sakuyamon, you can revive it back. So you constantly have this floodgate that you can run it without breaking your deck. It works because it's in color. You constantly have this card that puts Royal Knight behind, and then versus Sakuya, their token is mandatory unless they skip the token, like by evolving over the card, right? But if they're not getting the token, they're losing value. So what they trigger the token, then they trigger Biting Crush or Leviathan X, which then gives you a play to make. So for me, Leviathan is just very well slated into the format. I think players should pick up this deck. I don't think they will, but I think it's just too powerful. And also, we gotta keep the video spicy, right? We gotta make people look at it and be like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, I definitely do think Leviathan sits as an anti-meta deck right now, because if you look at the top two decks for Sakuya and Royal Knight, so there's so many Digimon play by effect, so many tokens. In fact, sometimes you don't even need Rostrum to be there. Biting Crush, you can just wait and sit with a level 5 with X antibody or XPF down, Protoform, and then once you hit the security into the Tamer, or once they evolve to play a Tamer or Digimon or token, you can just evolve up with Leviathan X from your trash, and that's basically a board wipe. No question now.
Okay, Phoenixmon. This is just pure Phoenix, not AncientGreymon. This deck is very interesting because you could say it's actually pretty decently slated into the format, because versus Royal Knight, you have access to Solarmon, and this is one of the few decks that you can cheat out Solarmon because of the BT20 Phoenixmon. And then versus Sakuya, if they ever get rid of your Phoenixmon, then you spawn all your effects. One spooky thing about that, though, is that your on plays are turned off by the Valder. So sometimes you don't get like the effects of like BT20 Phoenix on play or Garuda X or whatever. And then you have like a lot of random matchups. Anything with Hexablow is hard, right? I think that's just like a very big issue. And we did see that Galaxy end up winning Worlds. And then you also have, I think Hexablow in general is just a very powerful card. So for me, I think Phoenix has a lot of good tools, but some of the matchups are still a little bit difficult. So I think Phoenix for me sits at tier 3.
Yeah, I don't interact with Phoenixmon. I don't know why players here don't like. I think birds are in general, I guess. But I think the deck does has its potential in terms of whereas. But again here, if you look at tier 1 and tier 2, he is just falling short in terms of what you can do. Imperial can freeze. Sakuya can with auto arm. There's no on play, and then Royal Knight is just gonna clear about time after time. Even though if you have recursion of your Tamers of your Digimon, I think it's still gonna be an uphill battle. So this sits at the tier 3 for me.
Well, so yeah, because Omni X just like removes you like everything you have, right? So it feels very hard. Do you think it's better than AncientGarurumon or Fenry?
I'll put it in the back. Yeah.
Okay, Rapid X. This is a deck I don't think this was very good in Asia. I don't if I remember. I know Yellow Vaccine was good. Yellow Vaccine hasn't seen play in a little while. For a little bit in North America, it actually Yellow Vaccine did see a little bit of success actually in post BT17, and it actually made top 32 for North America nationals as well, which is very interesting. So I
think Yellow Vaccine also seen some success in the Asia side. With Shane playing that during Gao as well, and I think. Thailand, Fuelicious, also a competitive player that plays Yellow Vaccine Magna, and I think that's where it's a bit more, I guess, easy to pick up, and that's why players are gravitating towards it. And again, the value of the card, Rapid X being able to just rest all Digimon minus 4k, and then you gain memory back to keep it to your turn. It's just good. And then as long as suspended, your opponents are always at a minus 4k deficit, as they're pushing. And this sometimes can catch players off guard. I do accidentally attack, and then I realize that Rapidmon actually minus 4k, and then it died before it died. So there are times like this that will, if you're not careful, it might catch you, and then you might do quite a bit of misplay.
I think another thing though that like hurts the Rapidmon deck, both Yellow Vaccine and green build, is that the Hexablow, right? If you're playing
Yes.
Yellow Vaccine, you can't swing under Hexablow, right? It just freezes you. It also makes it harder to reproc your Magnamon X, unless you become immune, right? If you're immune, then it's different. But getting value off of that is a little bit harder. And then for the green build, Hexablow, not as difficult, but still a little bit difficult. So for me, I think Rapidmon is good. It's sometimes it does really well, but I don't have a lot of faith in the deck personally. Although maybe it's better than Birds, but either way, tier 3, tier 4, it's like you know.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it sits as tier 3 because I think you still have access to medieval Gallantmon, which is
Oh,
I
true,
think
actually.
one of the best. I think Gallantmon,
You
in my
know,
opinion.
that's fair. Actually, I'll bump it
And,
up.
yeah, and also as Zavaka Ace, which is a new addition in the
Mhm.
BT20. And this card sometimes do catch people off guard because again here, if you have access to Medieval Gallant and Zavaka Ace, there's two targets, you
Yeah.
can basically potentially catch your opponent. So basically one, it's with Zavaka Ace on the level 5. I think that's usually where you evolve into Rapidmon that you
Mhm.
can't, be returned to deck or be deleted, which is very strong in my opinion as well.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it sits a bit higher in my opinion. In fact, I'll
Yeah.
put it right at the front of tier 3.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good point. With Medieval Gallantmon and Safaga Ace, I didn't even think about that. Those are really both great tools for the Rapidmon deck. So yeah, that's fair. Okay, Magnamon X. This is a deck, a very big talking point in Digimon, right? This is the super immune, big body
Mm,
blocker. Everyone complains about this card. And recently there's a new adaptation, right? Being the Omekamon cool Boy Omni X build, right?
yes.
Where when you finally remove the Magnamon X, and then suddenly Omni X comes out to beat you, and if that's not happening beforehand, they put you to 0 and they just Omni X for game, right? And now it's searchable. It's a searchable Omni X.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
for me, I think the deck still suffers from consistency issues. It was suffered from consistency issues before. It's gotten slightly better now. And you have like a fallback game plan, which is really nice. But the deck, I think, is just not consistent enough for me to be like, okay, yeah, I can get around this. So for me, it's tier 2, even with the new additions.
Oh wow. Yeah. For me, it's tier 2 as well because I
Mhm.
think it loses out to Royal Knight and Sakura X because
Yeah,
of Alphamon Orican.
yeah,
Yeah.
hmm
It's just gonna be gone the next turn.
yeah,
And with Valderam on play, or even sorry, pause plugin. Yeah,
hmm
that is in Sakura X that stops a lot of when Digivolve effect that shuts down basically Magna X a lot.
yeah,
Previously, I think people were playing kind of like standard build of decks like Purple High that have little interaction with the board. I think right now there is more board presence in the
hmm
top tier deck, so this deck tends to fall out a bit. But if you are again able to do a turn 2 Magna X, I think it's still worth
Oh, it's still very good. Yeah,
playing. Yes, it's just literally sometimes always been talking to myself, how do I counter a turn 2 Magna X?
yeah.
And it's always come to the answer that there is no counter. You just need to accept it, and then if they go into Zubagon Punch the next turn, and then I think that's where you accept your fate. Yeah, and
Yeah.
this those were times that you feel that you are just powerless against Magna X. But
Mhm.
other times, I think there are also there are definitely workarounds, to make sure that this deck is left in check. And I
Mhm.
think the top two decks now are answers against that.
Yeah. And I think another really big thing about the Magna deck, so Cool Boy is only opponent's turn, right? So when you get minus
Yes.
15k DP on your turn and it dies, you don't get a proc Cool Boy, which is a really big thing. And like you said,
Yeah.
pause plugin is very, very hard for the deck to play around. Um, I forgot Blinding Ray did go to 1, right? So Blinding Ray to
Yeah,
1
but
is a hit for the deck. In BT21, they get Island of Adventure, which replaces Blinding Ray kind of because it activates the Magna X effect and also gives you DP, which is really nice, but it costs 2, so it is a bit expensive. Um, but yeah, like you said, tier 1 is they all have really good tools to beat the Magna X. And versus decks like for example or anything that can go very wide, it can also be very hard to beat, right? Because you only have so much
yep.
removal, and unless we're back on Heaven's Judgment, I see that still being an issue. I know East posted a video where Momin, our NA representative, played versus Land, the EU representative, and they were playing
Hmm.
Levia versus Magna X, and Levia ended up winning the matchup, actually, because they would constantly just go wide to where Magna X couldn't clear the entire board, and then they were able to just eventually outgrind Magna X with resources. So
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people started playing the Cool Boy Omega build, because they realized that they can't just rely on Magna X as the Great War. They needed another secondary answers to make sure that they're able to still control the board back. And I think Omega and Omega X basically fits the whole concept to the deck.
Yeah. Okay. Dexdoru, a deck that was very much so popularized by Kurova, right? I watched a lot of Kurova Dexdoru. Very hard deck. It's a very difficult deck to play optimally, right? So I'm curious. Yeah. You spend a lot of time with Kurova. What are your thoughts on this deck?
Yeah. Somehow I think, I don't know why Kurova likes to play deck. They are not easy to play. That, trust me. I think we have been through that path. We have conversation. We even tried playing the deck. During Thailand BCF. It was such a horrible experience. I can tell you that. It's not. It definitely has a high ceiling in terms of the learning, but in terms of forward planning, this deck requires you to think really in depth. Yeah, in terms of the sequencing, in terms of which play is the most optimized to make sure that you gain back board control, or you can just swing back, and make sure, because this deck has quite a lot of power that can delete Tamer, that can delete Digimon if your opponents are not careful. Which just happened in one of the matches earlier in the Ultimate Cup, where the opponent's Digimons were being taunted, and without realizing, he pushed out from raising a level 5, and then the collision went into Torogora, and then just brings back the board, back to 0. Yeah. And again, I think the match that happened in today also saw plays or tech cuts like Medieval Gallantmon, which I think is also a very staple card in such decks, where you are able to still gain back that board control when you're not able to do raising, or when your opponents ruin you, and you have little options to do, because this deck, if under rune, actually plays will need to play differently. For example, you can play the Durugamon, which if it's deleted, you can evolve Dexdoru from trash.
Right.
I think that's give them some access to make sure that they have board presence. But again, here I think this deck, it's definitely not easy to pilot. I would actually rank it at tier 3 at the moment.
Okay.
Purely because it is not a deck that is easily picked up.
Yeah.
You need to deep dive the deck for at least, I think, few weeks or even down to a month before you completely grasp the power of the deck in this case.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the level 6, now there are more options. I think there could be plays of like even RP Imperial being tagged into it, because in terms of the top line, I think right now is always the standard Dorogora, Dex Dorogora.
Yeah.
With the new Dexmon, I've never seen any Dex being played in that deck yet. It's mainly still with the Luga based variant,
right,
which I think is the more consistent, and you don't need to worry about your tamers, and evolving from trash is always a good thing.
So before I talk about decks, I thought about it. I was looking at this tier 4, and I thought about it. I really hate AncientGreymon. I think this deck is really bad. I was like, I was like, man, this deck really sucks. Huh? And then the same I think this deck sucks too.
I could have moved it all down.
Yeah, I was like, I might just be a hater. I'm a really big hater, actually. Because I was like, man, you really just lose to Hexablower, huh? And I was like, this is bad. I hate this deck. But yeah, so
maybe I'm giving two credits to this. I'm not. I'm quite forgiving. I mean, I still think that players will figure things out. So
yeah,
because I think if I put it down at the ban list, people think that the deck is not playable.
It's okay.
So I'd like to give that little of hope.
If they figure it out, good for them. Good job. But me, I'm not gonna figure it out. I'm not wasting energy and time on that. That's too much. But for me, Dexdoru, I think Dexdoru actually is like pretty decent into the meta, right? Taunt is just really strong. I think the only matchup where Taunt feels kind of bad is the Royal Knight matchup, right? Because you taunt and they suck it with Yigi, they absorb it. So you're like, oh, okay, I taunted nothing, right? You can still get value off of like collision into their stack to get the free evo, but then Omni X just bot decks you and it feels really bad. But into matchups like, say for example, the Levia or the Sakuya, I think you have a lot of like agency in terms of like forcing plays because like Sakuya can't play around it unless they evolve into level 6 in the back, right? Because then they get Talmon inherit
Yep.
to do that. So versus a lot of inexperienced Talmon players or Sakuya players, I think you do very well actually. And with Purple Hybrid getting nerfed, which I forgot Purple Hybrid got nerfed. We talked about that. I actually think Doru is kind of well positioned. It does also good into Gallant because you taunt it and they don't have immunity at the start of their turn, so you can resolve your Digivolve and all of that as well. So I think Doru has a lot of really great tools, and I think it could be pretty decent. So I believe in Kurova once he's done with Sakuyamon. I think he can cook this deck. I actually think this is like bottom of tier 2. I think it has potential.
Yeah, but just a heads up, I think playing BO3 with this deck for 7-8 rounds,
It's hard.
it's gonna drain you
Oh
a
yeah.
lot. It's gonna drain you a lot more than you would think.
Oh, it will. Trust me. We're fully aware. Interestingly enough, it actually made top 32 NA nationals this year as well. And is a deck. It's won a couple events too. So yeah, I think the players the ones that are willing to put the time and dedication into this deck can do very well with it. Okay.
Yep, definitely.
Purple Hybrid. For me, I forgot Purple Hybrid got hit. The Jack Raid and Blinding Ray hits slipped my mind. But Purple Hybrid, a lot of people probably gonna go away from Purple Hybrid. I think this deck is still extremely powerful. I think it's still very obnoxious. It's a very, very good matchup into Royal Knights, right? Because they just have no way to interact with your tamers, so you're able to get away with so much damage. You can play both the pure purple variant still with the mill win con. It's not as degenerate. It is not as crazy as before. Like it's a lot more fair now, but it's still very strong. And you could also play the
Yep.
purple yellow variant, right, where they're using the top end like Venus, Sendril, and the Rihi, right? So I think Purple Hybrid is still very flexible, and Tamer interaction is still very being unable to interact with Tamers is still really strong. You still struggle into Hexablow, which I think is a really big hurdle you have to overcome. But for me, I actually think Purple Hybrid is very high tier 2 because I think it's really great tools.
Oh, honestly, when the ban list came out, I thought it would be a pair restrict with Dustmon and Yamato. I
Yeah.
didn't expect that
Oh yeah,
it's gonna be a
Yamato
straight
got
up
hit.
ban.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that deck, which I enjoy playing a lot. Now I won BCF, Singapore last year with the deck, and I know everyone agrees, and we know that when it comes to piloting this deck, it is not that hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you pick this deck, 2 days, one day ago, and you just play a few rounds, you probably get the hang of things because of how easy that you understand the gameplay is. I just need Yamato and your trash. I just need dust. I just need to discard my voucher. The game just go boom boom boom. Yeah, just very fast.
Yeah.
With Yamato being totally banned, I feel that this deck will struggle a bit, and I think even me as a purple hybrid player, I'll be, leaving this at my shelf, and exploring other decks, and I think this is also at a time where Sakuya is slowly becoming more popular, and with Valderam shutting down, your Tamers, it was already starting to lose interest in me.
Yeah.
And but for me, I think in terms of where this deck sits, it's at the tier 3.
Okay.
It is still good. I think in one of the Chinese Twitter as well, X as well.
Yeah.
There was a post with using Soundbirdmon, discarding
Yeah.
options. And I think that's a rather interesting take. As also players that are starting to, maybe they have invested quite a bit in the Dust and Vouchers alternate arts, and that's why they are trying to make the deck work. But I do think that the mechanics of changing color, preventing aces, access to milling, two different win cons. This was not. I would say this mechanic was not available, in the previous meta. I think based on these two conditions of winning con, players has a lot of different strategies going, to take the games.
Yeah.
And if you look at top tier decks, there's no one clear way. Even Royal Knight now has, not just the BT13 Omegamon. You can just totally win with your Omega X or even with Crimson and Sakura X. Although you can go into Valderam, but sometimes you can do Rune mode and just take the control back. So if you have multiple winning approaches, I think it's a deck that is worth to consider and invest in. And I think that's where we see the difference in skills rather than just the deck building in this case. But again here, yes, it's still good, but to me it sits at the tier 3 because players gonna shun away from this deck already because of Yamato being one corner. In fact, I think the whole of Yamato's family is now in the ban list from there, which is very sad, and players are gonna shift to more other decks
Yeah.
to consider because these are not it is not a deck that you should be looking out to play against with. Yeah, it
Yeah.
won't be such popularized already.
Yeah, and I think it was really funny, and I ever since BT7, I hate hybrid decks. I think it's the most boring gameplay in all of Digicon. I hate hybrid decks.
Yes,
But that being said,
But-
I think it's funny that I put it purple hybrid still higher than you did, and you play purple hybrid. I just hate purple
Yeah.
hybrid.
yeah, back then it was as the saying goes, right? If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was that person. I was literally that player that just started to join in because I just find the deck super annoying.
Yeah. Okay, so Shoutmon or Crossheart, right? This is a deck, it's on the box, it has to be good, right? And then it just wasn't good. But then it went 8-1 at a event, and I tested that list, the 8-1 list. And it was actually pretty solid, right? Because the idea it was that if you go into Valder over EX6, your partition is live because you have Zeke already in source. So I was like, oh, that's actually like a very, very powerful combo. And then I played it a little bit more, and I was like, wait, this is actually like really strong. And then I played it into tier 1, and I was like, oh wait, never mind, this is like not that good.
Yeah,
Yeah, go on.
this is one of those decks that is, it looks good on paper.
Yeah.
It looks good on X because, people are playing this deck and having tremendous win. And I can only say that, luck has a strong part to play in this.
Yeah.
Either it is the player's day, but when you start playing it and you see it goes, you're always missing that 1-2 pieces. And even if you go to Valder most of the time, it might be too late into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where the deck tends to lose out in Steam. And in fact, I think because of that, unfortunately, I'm putting it in tier 4.
Hurts my heart. I like this deck a lot, and I think the deck is very okay. And post ban, I think it's still like you can do some kind of cool stuff with it. So for me, I'm gonna pretend it's okay, and I'm gonna put it in tier 3. But because a lot of the tier 1 matchups are very difficult. Like Hexablau is hard, Levia is hard, Royal Knights is okay actually. It's okay. And Red Purple Imperial is actually a really good matchup for you, surprisingly. Because you aren't affected by the effect where you can't play Digimon by effect because you digicross, right? Yeah, and then you delete it, and then when they partition, it's all under -6, so then it dies anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty decent matchup in a Red Purple Imperial. And it's also for that reason pretty okay into regular Imperial as well. Very bad matchup into Purple Hybrid though. Very bad matchup. Because you have like 5 different colors, you hand them for free.
Yep. I think Crossheart being Crossheart has its own issue. I mean, this is not like back then when X4 draws you like a gazillion cards, every turn. So this deck still suffers a bit in terms of draw power.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it sits. But I think again, Crossheart players, if you like playing them, go ahead. There's a bit of access to Valder Arm, which I think is a really great card for this deck.
Yeah. Okay. LordKnightmon. I know you won an event with LordKnightmon, right? Back in the day, I think. Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I play a lot of LordKnightmon X when it first came out because seeing 3 keywords on a single Digimon just makes me think, and I like the alternate art of it. It was so shiny and golden.
Yeah.
And I guess back then, Purple Good Stuff or the Purple Engine with Dobo, Cerberus, which is basically the meta back then, or basically the engine that gets Purple going, right? It's so popularized, and when you tried playing LordKnight X, it's just a natural to me because I always like to get things set up fast, make sure that opponent has little they can do, and I think moving into the current meta. In fact, initially I thought that the meta would not be such a favorable to Lord X, but looking at some of the Japanese tournaments, they are claiming that that now has more potential. In my guess, because you are always seeing at least a Digimon on the board.
Yeah.
Not like back then where in Purple Hybrid it's basically an empty board and you can't interact with it. Lord X works very well with boards that have Digimon. Yeah, and with that, they can 2-check, 4-check you very easily, and then you can prevent any aces, from going off from there. And I think that's why it's, against some of the, I would say, tier 2, tier 3 deck, it do have a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think Lord X is still playable. I think players will continue to refine. I won't say the engine, but rather the top end in terms of what can be explored. Because we also seen Lord X in some of Levi's build as well as a one-off tech card.
Yeah.
It could be vice versa. In some ways, I used to play the Jade Memory Boost to have access to the Pomomon.
Yeah, El Pomo, yeah.
Quartz and Pomomon as well. Yeah, which I enjoy playing because with Quartzmon and Sabera X, you are doing, you can restand and you can trash and attack. It's such a good play because back then there was so many tamers, right? And you can't interact with tamers. But right now, I think there are very little in terms of where the board can go wide for this decks. But it still sits at a good tier 3 for me.
Yeah. So for me, what's very interesting is when Lord Knight was in Asia, it was doing very well. Partially because of you, right? I think you inspired a lot of Lord Knight players. And it was so like when you look at Asia, Lord Knight was winning a lot of events. Like it was doing very well. And over in the West, we're like, oh, LordKnightmon has to be like tier 1, right? He's doing so good in Asia. And then we played LordKnightmon in the West, and we're like, wait, this deck sucks. We're like, wow, this is not very good at all. Because the issue with Lord Knight is that it was too fair, right? Which is weird to say. But it rarely ever OTK'd. And if your opponent didn't have a board, like you said, you didn't interact with anything.
Yep.
So we were playing it, and we're like, wait, this is like a little too fair, actually. And then we played, and we were like, wait, this is just like worse Leviamon. So it did very badly in the West, actually, which I think is really funny.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm very biased. I guess LordKnightmon, you bring up a really good point that the meta is more board focused, so you get more mileage out of that. But I also look at this and I'm like, okay, well, decks like, for example, Sakuya, when you Volder arm, you can't Cerberus, right? Cerberus effect is turned off. Royal Knights, they absorb back the body, so you're only against one body at a time, and so unless you put a lot of pressure down, it's very difficult. And then not to mention Omnimon X, right? So for me, I'm very biased against Lord Knight. It's not done very well for me in the past, and it's hard for me to imagine it doing very well going forward. So for me, I actually put it in tier 4. Which
come on,
I know. When I was getting ready for the video, I was like, oh, he's gonna hate me for this. Cause you're the Lord Knight guy. You're the guy that popularized Lord Knight. And so I'm like, he's gonna hate this.
Yeah, show some love for the Lord Knight, man. I mean, it has its good as bad, but
yeah,
I guess it does. I'll see. I'll try to find time to change your opinion if I were to switch to Lord Knight and see if I can innovate from there as well.
If you top a regional event with Lord Knight, I'll eat my words. Okay. Do it for me. Okay.
Okay, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Red Purple Imperial, very good deck. It got top 4 at Worlds. It's done very well recently. I know Shane has also been talking about this deck a lot. This is a deck where it has a lot of tools, the good floodgate, a lot of floating, a lot of pressure. It just does a lot of things well, right? So for me, I actually think this is a very good deck. I think it's tier 1, a lot of potential. It's very expensive, so I think a lot of players probably will not play this deck because for some reason Bandai decided to make Shaderamon an expensive promo. Or not that they made an inexpensive promo, but they made it so inaccessible. So I think I think it's tier 1. in terms of like power, and I think a lot of players will still play it. But for me, it's just like I don't know, like
Okay.
it's good. Like arguably, I think it's better than Sakuya maybe. But Sakuya just did a crazy performance this morning when I woke up. 5 top 8 is crazy. So
Yeah.
tier 1 maybe not as good as Sakuya, but like it's pretty neck and neck for me.
Yeah, I think for RP, yes. I mean, hearing that it's $90 in the West side. Oh my God. I mean, even I wouldn't touch the deck.
No, not at all,
But I
right?
think yes, I'll probably just you guys try it. Let the rich boys play the game, and see how it goes. But as we are testing as well again with RP, I think we have a lot of the uncles play group like Shin, trying out the deck, and as we play more of this deck, we realize that it has a very clear weakness,
hmm
which is once you're up to the fighter mode,
hmm
it stops there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if your opponent has a way to interact with the board, you are done. And especially if you're against Sakuya, the Border Arm just shuts it down, and it's gonna with Royal Knight, there's so many excess of Digimon that can help control and fight back the board. Although it does has high roll factor. I think we saw in Worlds where Onion was playing with Kurova, right?
Yeah.
But as you see the gameplays pans out, there are certain, I guess, luck factor that is placed.
Yeah.
Especially when you are trying to ensure that you have cards in your trash, cards in your hand, and then going up that line. So it's basically you can see the bullet coming from a mile away. So
Yeah.
things are coming, and if you have ways to prevent that from happening, or if you are that lucky, your opponent break, I think this deck it's not favorable in the top tier in my opinion.
Mhm.
So actually I'll put this deck in the tier 2 right at the front.
Ooh.
It's close to tier 1, but I guess it does has its
Yeah.
weakness in terms of closing out the game. It can close out the security, but I can tell you that when going for the last check, it's gonna be so difficult
Yeah.
most of the time.
Okay, GigaSeadramon. I feel like Bandai tried to push this one. Seadramon X, Mega C X, Giga C. Just before that, Metal C Ace. All these really cool cards. And then the deck still does nothing. So, congratulations, tier 4.
I still I'll play at tier 3 still because I
Okay.
see some players that are trying to innovate with the deck. There are some builds with the Chronicle
Yeah.
builds with top line being Giga Sidra. That's also an interesting take. But then again, I think against the current meta, it still have a lot more work to do.
Yeah, what Chronicle which I forgot to put Chronicle on this list, but like, well, it's okay. It's okay. Um,
Yes.
I was gonna say, can we pretend this is Chronicle, but no, it's fine.
That's Alphamon.
People will survive. Chronicle to me is so clunky, right? Like with the new egg, the new Doraemon that comes out, it fixes a lot of the issues, but like we don't have that egg yet. So it's very clunky. It's a very, very clunky deck.
Yes, it is not a deck that draws a lot because you're always at the deficit of
Yeah.
-1. You're
Yeah.
playing down a Digimon evolve and you play down a Tamer, and then you're evolving up. You need to play another Digimon into your breeding. If you don't have
Yeah.
the card, you're just wasting that effect at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I we were testing Chronicle, and I have such a low opinion of Chronicle. I literally forgot to put it on the tier list. So I guess that shows just how I think about Chronicle. I do think the Chronicle
Yeah.
toolbox is very cool though. The one like with Giga C top end, and we were talking about like what can we do to like try and make it work, and then it just sounded like too much effort to do versus just playing Sakuya or something. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yes, yes, yeah. That's the same conclusion that I come to as well.
Yeah.
Too much effort, too much thinking.
Yeah.
Move on.
Okay, Examon. We have Examon X and Dracomon X, which Dracomon X is such a custom card. That's crazy.
Yes. Okay.
But it doesn't fix the actual issues of Examon, which is consistency. And obviously, if the BT21 issue cards didn't fix consistency, the BT20 version of it is still bricky. So, for me, this is a tier 3 deck. I don't have a lot of faith in Examon. Like, I think it's cool. I think it does some cool things sometimes. But it's just so inconsistent that I look at it and I'm just like, eh.
Yeah, I think when it first came out in EX3, I think it was one of the deck that it's managed to interact with breeding.
Yeah.
With Slavedra being able to be the hard counter, right, to such OTK decks back then.
Yeah.
Right now, you don't see a lot of OTK decks, and I think with Steerdra coming, it does help with the board. But again, here you need quite a bit of cards to set up. There's not a lot of searches in the deck. In fact, there's probably only 8, and with the memory boost, adding that in, entertainment. So I think in terms of searching and but I think there are some cool cards coming up,
Yeah.
like Draco X.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think XLX is a really good card, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just
It
another Examon.
it lets you OTK a lot easier, which is nice, but it doesn't change the way the game plays, I feel like. So at the end of the day, it's still the same deck.
Yeah, but I think there are still players that would like to, maybe have fun with the deck, and in my opinion, it sits at the tier 3.
Okay.
Towards the back end.
You might be nicer than me. You're a lot nicer than me. Okay.
Yeah, I always have hope. I always have hope for decks like this, so that people can maybe start to innovate and have more deck choices along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Alphamon. Again, I forgot Chronicle. It's okay. Pure Alphamon, I think is really interesting. I know we have a player in North America. His name is Lychee. Lychee is our the equivalent of Boris, but for black. Lychee has been playing black for a very long time. He brought Gallantmon to the last couple of regional events for the last formats. So when Zenith got support, he's playing a lot of Gallantmon, and he actually topped Gallantmon.
Oh wow!
Yeah, right. So he's doing very well with that deck. He played Alphamon back in BT15, I think, or 16 or something like that. It was doing very well with it. He was playing black back in BT4, which, oh my god, I feel so strongly about black in BT4 and BT5. That's his whole own video, honestly. Maybe another day, but we're talking about it, and he's trying to make the deck work. And I know a lot of people, kind of the conclusion that a lot of people have come to is like the Lapillus build, where you taunt your opponent and then force them to play into the Oryuken. I've seen that build floating around a lot. And so I think that build is really interesting, because we tried the Mega Digimon Assembly build, where you try to get into the Oryuken. I played it for 3 games. I looked at it and I was like, this is so inconsistent. This is so bricky. So I think the Lapillus build is a little bit more coherent, because you don't have to try and high roll your opponent with this crazy combo. Instead, you can kind of play a more controlled tempo game. So because of that, I actually think the Lapillus build is tier 3. It's definitely better than this garbage over here, but yeah, I think Alphamon has some potential. Not crazy potential, but there's some potential.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for Alphamon. I played the deck since BT9, and I've seen. I think that's where I started to blink the deck even more. So I felt that the deck was, back then when it was BT9, where it's an OTK meta, it was just so easy. I wouldn't say so easy, but it's just so straightforward that you know how to plan your move ahead. I think moving now into BT20, they do have access to more cards, the SOC Doru Grey, and I think in this case BT20 Alphamon and Oyuken as well. The playstyle has changed slightly a bit. We are not looking to play UGs as much. It's mainly to go into your Oyuken either through getting your opponent to attack and then just acing them, or you're able to do the Digimon assembly. But as you say, there could be sometimes a bit inconsistency going. So I still find that it does has its own surprise factors. I'm leaning more towards the OG build, which is using Cool Boys, which is able to pull back memories. But again, the deck suffers when you have floodgates. Once you have a Gazimon that's on the board, or Tyramon, the deck just loses steam very quickly. And right now, even in the Doru Grey line, not many people are playing Dexdoru Grey that can clear a level 3, or in this case, the only factor here that the saving grace is probably Dexdorugamon, which is able to delete 4 cost or below Digimon from there. But but it's still one of my favorite Digimon, and I'm putting it. I'm gonna play it at tier 3. Because I still think that there are players that's gonna come in. Either they love Alphamon a lot, or they also see the potential in OTK. But I think in terms of consistency issue, it fell off quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So Ganku Jess. Jessmon is my favorite Digimon, as Alphamon is yours. I try to make Jessmon work every other format, and it never works very well. It always blows up in my face. I love BT10 Jessmon. I miss BT10 Jessmon so much. It's never been the same, and that's okay. this new version of Jessmon that relies on the Gankumon for like the high roll combo, I think is like really cool, and like when it goes off, it's really strong, but it's very inconsistent. It's not very good. It's very like bricky, but when it goes off, it's good. But the issue is that when you do the combo, the turn after is very okay, because like you can Jogress into the Jess GX, which is kind of nifty, and that's cool. But sometimes you just don't have that because again you're very bricky, and sometimes you're fighting for your life to even find a level 4 or level 5. And so when that happens, it's just like I've seen the deck get some results. I know there's the one person on Twitter with the Sistermon Noir icon, and they've been doing very well with Jess actually. So kudos to them. They're very good. Yeah. But I think the average person, you just pick it up and it's not good.
Yeah, that's Kamashiro, right, from Korea.
Yeah.
He's been playing Jessmon ever since as well. I mean, I play against Ganku X as well. I think it's one of those decks where Sakuya doesn't have a clear answer if they set it up, with a full board immunity.
Yeah.
And tends to struggle a lot from there. But once they set it up, it's gonna be very hard. But
yeah.
Most of the time, like you said, it's not gonna be as what it seems, like a fairy tale of good endings, to what happens. And it does bricks a bit. It does, and even if it doesn't brick, you're gonna give your opponent a bunch of memory, like a whole lot more memories. Just hard casting the Ganku X with the cost minus. It's gonna at least give them 5 or 7, sometimes, because you might be trying to gain that full board immunity. But again, here this deck takes quite a bit to set up.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's sitting at a tier 3 right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I also think it sits at tier 3. I just when it gets up is pretty good, but getting there is very hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Necromon. So this is one of the brand new decks that came out, BT20 Liberator. For a first wave of support, it's actually pretty coherent. It's not bad. Execute is a very interesting mechanic, and the ability to float into bodies and then like Chimera combo is very cool. I just think the deck, obviously for being a tier 1 wave deck, is lacking a lot of like pieces to push it over the edge. Overall, like if you high roll and it does some cool things and executes a really good mechanic, but sometimes it feels like very telegraphed into like what they can do because they don't generate a lot of memory out of nowhere. And Jack Ray got hit as well, so to me it's too easy to play around. So I think it's actually a tier 4 deck for me personally.
Well, I'm in favor of this deck a bit more than you because I opened 4 of them, during my cases. But I do see some players testing with. I think when it comes to purple, right, you must know that purple has a lot of I say good stuff in this case. Especially paired with Analog Boy.
Yeah.
I think this card synergizes with Analog Boy so much that it gives you the value of being able to continue raising, pushing for damage, and still being able to raise at some point. But like most deck, I think here the execute mechanic is good, deletion is good, but again there are some decks that have immune, there's anti-deletion effects, and it's gonna take you a while to set up as compared to the top tiers decks, and or in this case being high roll. Even the high roll factor is not so high over here.
Yeah.
So for me it's decent. I'll put it at tier 3.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and then Zhuqiaomon. Zhuqiaomon was the protagonist of Liberator. Got the new secret rare, Zafaka Ace. I know in the West, at least in the Huang Zero Discord, we've been testing it a little bit, right? A lot of green copers in there. Zhuqiaomon to me, I feel like it's just if your opponent doesn't have a board, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to interact with, and I hate that part about green. Bloom Lord or Bloom Leopard, whatever you want to call it. That deck is good because it can do something when your opponent doesn't have anything, right?
Correct.
But Zhuqiaomon can't, and because of that, Zhuqiaomon for me, I think is tier 4 because needing something to interact with is not good. It doesn't make you a good deck.
Yeah, I think the pure Zhuqiaomon build, it's definitely a player's love for the character.
Yeah.
Yeah. that deck itself, although it does, if, I mean, if you have the full line, right, it has immunity. You know, it sometimes could catch your opponent by surprise. Honestly, yeah. So it's one of those decks that, you know, if you're not paying attention to, understanding about the effects or what it can or can do, you might just lose to it without, you know, you understanding that. But again, there's also another build which is more of a Terrio build, you know,
Yeah.
going up into Safaga's Medieval line. So I think there are a few engines. There's an Alliance build as well that I know,
Mm.
that is gonna circle around Zafaga. So there are some interesting ideas, and I think there's more to cook. So for me, I think it sits at the tier 3 because there's potential
Yeah.
that players might explore where it can go to in terms of the current meta.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Leopardmon. So again, shout out to Boris. Boris and I forget his name off my head immediately, but there's a player in EU that also got second place with Leopardmon. Huge inspirations for me personally. I love Leopardmon. I have max rarity Leopardmon actually sitting on my desk right now. Um,
Oh,
I know, right? What
yeah.
a lot of money, a lot of money for no reason. Um, but for me, Leopardmon is it does very interesting thing. Like it has the bounce mechanic, it has board expansion, you have Bloom Lord of Pressure. It can do a lot of really cool things, right? But my issue with Leopardmon is that like at the end of the day, you're still a green deck, so like you need your opponent to interact with to like get the maximum value out of your deck. And if you have nothing to interact with, you don't kill very fast. And because you still kill like fairly slowly, it's very unappealing in that aspect because like a lot of the tier 2 tier 1 decks they can outright kill your opponent without needing anything to interact with, right? um Except for like Doru. I guess Doru's like the one exception there, but like Doru can force interaction one way or another, right? Because they have
Yep.
like taunt and whatnot. But for me, yeah,
Yeah.
Leopard. I love this deck, but it's tier 3. It's just needing to interact with your opponent is just like very not great.
Yeah, I think in Singapore at least, I think Boris has been inspiration to a lot of green players. I think
Yeah.
he has moved on from Bloom Lord build, you know, to I've seen it done Terror as well. I've seen it done Leopard X with
Hmm.
some weird shenanigans in it, but I think he managed to make it work because in terms of where green stands right now, resting is a very great effect. Yeah, in
Hmm.
fact, suspending Digimon, it's always basically it interacts. It basically makes your board opponents unable to counter or
Yeah.
sometimes even block certain attacks, or it gives you value in terms of Phoenixmon, for example.
Hmm.
In terms of where it is going in the current meta, I think Leopard X do has certain value.
Hmm.
Actually, Boris does also play Tiger, which also reduces Digivolution cost. So there's a lot of
Really?
cards that, yeah, he plays Tigers a lot. I think he likes the card because he give a flat +1 KDP to all Digimon, and
Oh.
sometimes this helps with being when opponent Shine Grey Room mode you. Your
Oh,
board is at
oh, oh!
minus
You
five
said
K.
you said Taiga. I thought you
Yeah,
said
Tiger.
I thought you said Tiger, like Tiger Vespamon. I was like, really?
No,
Okay,
Tiger
okay, okay,
Tamer.
okay.
Yeah, Tiger
I was
Tamer.
like, that's great. Tiger Vespamon is crazy.
Yeah, Tiger Tamer, and I think Mimi is also a
Yeah.
great card in green that's able to just interact and make sure that, you know, your bot is able to continue to raise and go up from there. I think that's where the value starts, you know, shifting towards. And for Boris, it has a lot of value in terms of expanding the bot from there.
Hmm. Yeah, I know there is a lot of lists floating around. Oh, also really quick, where would you put Leopardmon?
Oh, sorry, I'll put it at tier 3 actually.
Okay, here just for you, you can have it right there. Um,
Yeah.
I watched a lot of lists float around. Leopardmon or and Bloomlord both were both doing really well recently in Asia locals, right? Which I thought was very interesting. And then like I saw the list that combined the both of them. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Um, but yeah, just in general, I think green has a lot of potential to be explored, but it has to be done by somebody that like put a lot of time into green. You know, it's not a color you can
Yeah.
just pick up and be like, yeah, okay, this is broken, and then just run with it. Okay.
Yeah, and I also recall that in Thailand there's this
Hmm.
player by the name of Kaiser
Okay.
that just keep winning with Broomlockmon.
Oh.
He just keep winning with Broomlockmon. I mean, I'm not sure about the players there, but I'm losing to Boris 10 out of 10 time with Green. I'm gonna be so frustrated. Yeah. So this deck again is not to be underestimated.
Yeah.
You know, players that pause in a lot of time, I think will see success. You know, in
Yeah.
tournaments as well.
Actually really funny. So there's a One Piece player. His name is Cross. I don't know if you know of him, right?
Yeah,
Um,
heard of him before.
yeah. So Cross is one of my friends, and Cross used to be a Digimon player, right? Long time ago before One Piece. But it was really funny because Cross never good player, but he never saw like tournament success, right? He always like something happened, right? And so he went to go play One Piece, and then in BT, I want to say 15, yeah, BT 15, he came back to Digimon for a little bit, and he was playing Blue Milord for some reason, and he came up with this deck that played for a new world, the Mimi promo option. He played four of it, and he created
Okay.
Bloom Loop where
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I saw that. I noticed.
yeah, he would deck himself out in one turn. And so he made a board of 8 bodies in a single turn off of that option. And I played into it. I was like, wait, Nume can't beat this. I can only remove so many bodies. And no, and then he tried to play a regional with the deck, and the cards didn't come in the mail in time, so he didn't play. And ever since then,
Oh,
nobody played the deck. But I look at that deck, and I'm like, if somebody decided to pick this up, because it's a lot of work to play that deck. But
yes.
if anyone ever decided to play that deck, they probably actually could go very far with it, which is really funny to me because he played through Biting Crush too, which is crazy,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah, I know.
Hmm.
Maybe with Red Purple Imperial in the format, it's a little bit harder. But playing through Biting Crush as Blue Milord was very, very impressive to me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should have the tournaments of all green players. Let's see which is the best green players. Because it feels like it's gonna be very interesting then.
Yeah. Okay. Galaxy. So Galaxy, it just won Worlds. But ever since it won Worlds, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about Galaxy, which I think is really interesting. Maybe in
Yeah.
Asia is different, but like I haven't seen anyone play Galaxy ever since it won Worlds. Which everyone knows Galaxy is a good deck, but nobody plays Galaxy, which I think is really funny. But I think Galaxy has a lot of great tools. You have Hexablow, you have Invisi, you have access to red cards as well. So you have access to Dinomon, Medieval, etc. So I think Galaxy is tier 1. I think it's a good deck. Very interested to know why it doesn't see play, but nonetheless, I think it's still very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think in general toolbox deck are always strong. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when it comes to Galaxy, right, the engine is there. You're just looking at the top line
Yeah.
of the level 6 because as long as there's more sets to be printed, there will be new reds, new blues, and this decks just fits into any one of them.
Yeah.
And recently, even Gallantmon X, yeah, it's a
Mm-hmm.
great addition to the deck. Being access to immunity right now. We have seen more Invisimon play that was in Worlds.
Yeah.
That allow you to just go through your opponent's security with an end of turn effect that you can jump out and just delete or devolve opponent Digimon and gain back that board control.
Yeah.
And again, with Hexablow, sometimes you could even use the Tamer,
Mm-hmm.
Sayo,
Yeah.
to actually evolve it for free, which is purely stupid in my
It is
opinion. Where
very dumb. Yeah, very dumb.
yeah, it's just very dumb, and I guess that's where the deck shines. In fact, I thought that would be one of the cards that will be on the limit list, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess Bandai wants this deck to survive a bit longer.
Yeah.
So with that engine in place, good access to draws, good access to search. You're always pulling 2 cards. So again, back to my principle of seeing the value of card. If a card is able to generate you, +2, it's always a good card. And in this case, all the searches there can look for Light Fang,
Yeah.
and Light Fang, what claw?
Yeah,
Nightclaw.
Nightclaw.
Yeah.
Nightclaw. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you're always finding 2 cards. You can even look for Tamer from there. So to me, it's a tier 1. Yeah, it
Yeah.
sits just towards the end because it do has it depends on the player, but I think when it comes to the strength of the deck, it definitely is on top of the chart.
Yeah. Okay, Ragnalord. You mentioned that you actually took Ragnalord to an event, right?
No, there
Oh.
was a Malaysian BCF last year
Oh,
that
okay.
a player actually took Ragnar, and he won all the Swiss round, only to be deck checked and realize that he was using the wrong Digitama or one of the
Oh.
Digimon, and that he was DQ'd from there.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
man.
that was a very sad thing. Yeah, but again, Ragnar is one of those surprise decks that if it works, it goes up. You know, you have immunity, and you know it starts ramming going through, with a lot of on deletion effect. And then every turn you are able to slot Digimons. You know your Buildra, and able to take control on the board. So with the immunity effect from Ragnaloard Ace as well, I think this deck's it's cool. But to me, it is at a tier 4 because
Yeah.
most of the time you are just breaking.
Yeah. So Ragna actually very interestingly, I never saw it have results in Asia, which is very unfortunate because I think the deck is very cool. But in Western, actually, it actually has done okay. There's a player named Yuxo. Yuxo is over in Europe, and he actually got third place regional with Ragnaloard. And this was in EX6 format, I believe. And he was talking about how like Ragnaloard actually had like a lot of really great tools, be like with the taunt and the immunity and the pop and everything. It actually could do very well into the purple decks at the time. For me, I think Ragna, it's like you said, is sometimes a little bit inconsistent. And into a format where there's not a lot to interact with and lingering DP and things like that. Even pause plugin, right, is a little bit harder. So I think it is also is tier 4, but I don't think it's bad. Like I contemplated putting it in tier 3 because I believe in Ragnaloard more than birds. Honestly, birds can go down here for all I care. But is actually very interesting that I actually think it's better than birds.
Okay.
Just like I think it has a lot of really good tools. And Moment, one of the NA representatives for Worlds, I'm sure he'll be mad at me because I put birds so low now. But I can't see a world where birds does super well in this format, but maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. It's fine. Whatever. If he yells at me for it later, he yells at me for it later. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, if he proves you wrong, then
Yeah,
that's another
if he proves
that's
you
another
wrong.
video for you to that's another video for
Exactly.
you to
Yeah. Okay. Dominimon. So Dominimon's actually the deck that I took to nationals. I almost made day 2 for nationals. But then I paired into 2 very bad matchups, round 8 and round 9, after I was put into the tiebreaker bracket because I tied into the mirror, which was very unfortunate. I think it's actually a very good deck back then. In this format, I think it's a lot worse. I think Gallantmon being able to threaten removal so much is very difficult for you to deal with, and then you can't even ace them because they're immune. DP minus is very hard, so Sakuya is difficult. Yiggy is also a little bit difficult at times because there's like nothing for you to interact with. And Purple Hybrid is kind of a hard matchup too. So in general, I think Domini, I really like Domini. For me as a player, I like Towers deck where it's like super immunity, or I really like Rush style of decks. Because like if back in your BT3, my 1.5, I actually won a regional Rookie Rush, and then I also won a regional with Nume, and I got second place with Machine, top 8 with Hercules, etc. Right? Like I play these like control and rush decks. So for me, I really like Domini, and so I want to vouch for Domini. And in this format, it's actually pretty decent. Like there's some cool things that you can do, but just in general is Sakuya's hard. Galaxy is actually pretty easy. Oh, maybe not with Invisi. Invisi's hard. JK, I lie. Invisi's hard. Yeah, Invisi's hard. Oh man, talking about it out loud it hurts me. I hate to say it. I think Domini might be tier 4 now because of the new adaptations. Yeah.
Yeah, you do have a lot of tier 4s, man. but I think surprisingly, in today's Ultimate Cup there is a player that actually plays Domini. Trigger Angels.
Okay.
But it's more of a how to say it, high roll style. So there's a lot of aces, Cherubi aces.
Yeah.
With the Luceamon, baby Luceamon, and
Oh.
if you took a look at the replays for today, he was matched up against Boris, and the game came down to if I remember correctly, it was a 4-minute game.
4 minutes?
Yes, it was 4 minutes because Boris was breaking, and he went into AncientGreymon Ace, and then going to Domini, and from then on, it's done. Yes. There's a lot of Cherubis coming down. So I think but towards this format, I think Domini has quite a bit to catch up with.
Yeah.
Even with the protection, I think here Valdoram can just make
Yeah.
sure that all the Digimons are rested and they can't unsuspend. I think Domini's biggest weakness is Digivolve.
Yeah.
And if you look at the top tier, I think Galaxy is probably a good matchup against him. I'm not sure how that fights went against go against Royal Knight and Levia,
Yeah.
because they're both
You
deletion effect, right?
you actually do very well into Levia because they can. It's very hard for them to remove more than you can
Yes.
heal because of AncientGreymon Ace.
Okay.
But for a Royal Knight matchup, that seems okay actually. It might be a little too
Yeah.
hard for them to, because if they use the Omni X effect, you only have to burn one to protect majority of your board. So I think the Royal Knight matchup is actually probably really good for you.
Yeah, because I think Royal Knight, the only Digimon that is able to interact the board with is probably Alphamon or Yuken, which is the one
Yeah.
that clears the Domini from there.
Yeah,
And
minus
then
15.
hopefully,
Mhm.
yeah, but the rest is still mainly on deletion effect,
Yeah.
or even bottom deck effect. So I guess here, for me is at the tier 3.
Okay.
Yeah, slightly better.
Okay, Demon Lord. So I know this is a Brian deck. Brian's the one person that plays Demon Lord's Royal Knights. I think it's really funny.
Yes. Yep.
So interestingly, Demon Lord completely fell off the meta for both Asia and West, right? And I'm very curious as to why. Like I know Sakuyamon, we see more Sakuyamon. That's really hard for Demon Lords. And Royal Knight, I think, is also a hard matchup. But in general, I'm interested. Why do you think Demon Lord fell off?
Yeah, this is also a question that's bothering me. I mean, Brian playing Lord Knight and Seven Demon Lord, it's kind of like this good and bad side, right?
Yeah.
And I think seeing how the deck functions, it does works well, and then back then there were still people playing Seven Demon Lord. I think probably because there's a very I guess sinister combo when it comes to Lucemon and Mastemon.
Yeah.
Where it's able to keep trashing the security. There's a recursion effect, and with Levia being a strong counter to Takemikazuchi, and also any on play by effects decks, especially like even Imperial, for example. So the reason I guess why is seeing a lot of lesser play, I guess is because players just prefer switching and moving up, understanding more about the rest of the deck then. Because again, I think old decks are always decks that are I guess hard to be interested by players.
Yeah.
And as players, if you're competitive, you need to have a wider knowledge of other matchups as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think for Seven Demon Lord, if you compare Seven Demon Lord and Royal Knight, I think Royal Knight tends to weigh much more better in terms of effects.
Yeah.
Because again, here Seven Demon Lords are mainly deletion effects.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Royal Knight, there's bottom deck, there's minus DP. So it means that if there's decks that has anti-deletion, even like a Rapidmon can stand against a 7 Demon Lord from there. So and right now a lot of Valdoram can't any on play effects are shut down. So that's why I think, and even RP as well, they can't play Digimon by effects. So I feel that there is quite a bit of a rough matchups, and players are starting to shy away from it. And that's why to me it's still playable, but maybe not popular.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Yeah. So I will put it at tier 3 at this moment.
Okay. What, like mid, high, where?
Mid.
Mid. Okay. Yeah, for me, I agree with a lot of your points, right? Is a lot of people, you have Royal Knight, which feels just like a better Demon Lord, so they opt for that instead. It's not that Demon Lord is necessarily a bad deck, and I think Demon Lord still has like a lot of like good like pros to it. Like for example, if you remove the body, you still get a stack into the gate, which is really nice. But yeah, just in general, I feel like there's really not a lot of reason to play this deck versus like just playing Royal Knights. But that being said, I still think it can do some things. Like I think it's still pretty decent. So I'll put it in tier 3. Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I changed my mind because of the popularity that is not gaining. I actually will put it at tier 4.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I'll put it at tier 4. I think it's a deck that it's a lot of hype around it, and even today at Ultimate Cup, I only saw about 1 or 2 players that are playing this deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess conversion wise, consistent wise, it might not be able to make the top tier from there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then we have Dinomon, Tyrannomon. Funnily enough, this actually made top cut for Oceania Nationals, which is really interesting. But Ever
Yes.
since then, it's not topped anything. It's done nothing. Um, and bounce is just still very hard to deal with. Valder arm is very difficult to deal with, I imagine. Um,
Yep.
yeah. So and yeah, for me, it's tier 4. It's cool. Like it's a cool deck, but yeah, it's never done anything outside that one top cut. Which congratulations to that player. Really cool stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, congratulations to that player as well. Really good. I mean, it must be his day, man. Yeah, but again here, if looking at just the deck engine as well, it doesn't have much engine to play with. Uh, the most that you get is maybe through the fortitude that you gain. But again, this card it can easily be tagged into the galaxies. Back
Yeah.
then it
Hmm.
was used, yeah, as the top end as well, so that you are able to still come back, on play if your opponent managed to delete him. Again here, deletion effect, anything that you hear about deletion effect, it's not going to be enough. It needs to have some sort of a pseudo immunity or able to do a bit
Hmm.
more. So cheer, I'm going to put it at tier 4.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. Okay. Deep Sabers, right? Or fish. Um, so I know a lot of people have not been playing this deck. We have a friend in our testing group actually that's been playing a lot of fish, and he actually makes it look like a very coherent deck. He has like a lot of board control aspect, the AncientGreymon immunity. He's been OTKing a lot too. So I actually have a lot of respect for this deck now. So for me, seeing that it has access to like a lot of like you can like stun targets and you have random OTK potential, you go very wide. I didn't realize how overloaded AncientGreymon actually was as a card. So for me, I actually gonna put it high tier 3 for me personally.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to me the deck it's a typical blue deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bouncing or opponent Digimon or gaining memory, jamming and it functions very closely to like a Mirage deck if I were to compare it.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key card that was recently added was MegaSeadramon X,
Yeah.
and I think this is a card that changes a lot of how even blue decks can play. You've seen this in Galaxy Toolbox as well, being
Mm-hmm.
able to just return one level 4 Digimon, which used to be a limited Magnamon.
Yeah.
Yeah, effect, and right now you are seeing it in level 5 3 cost evolution, which is equivalent to like a Magnamon effect as well, but
Yeah.
with an ESS of Digimon attack can't be changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is huge because I think moving into you never know, right? You might be fighting random Magna X, which I think is still gonna be played by players. And that's gonna be the great war that you need to always take note of on how you are able to go against or work around it.
Yeah.
And I think this card fits nicely in there. And again here, I do share the same opinion. I think this deck has a great potential, and I do hope that players start to explore how we can optimize this
Mm-hmm.
or even playing it more consistently. So to me, I'll want to be putting it at tier 3.
Yeah. Okay. And then Gallant. So Gallant is a very, very popular deck, right? It's a protagonist deck. Everyone loves Gallantmon. Bandai just released so much support for it to push it. Um, and it also won Oceania Nationals as well. I know at Worlds there was only one Gallant player who was the Oceania representative. And unfortunately, he didn't make top cut. But Gallant, I think, as a deck, is good, right? It does a lot of damage. You have some immunity. You have removal, but the immunity is fake, right? It's very easy to play around that immunity because all you have to do is pass turn, and then you can just remove it.
Yep.
And then outside of like Wargrowl X, it's very susceptible to from certain forms of removal. Lingering DP minus is also problematic, and if yeah. So for me, I think Gallant is tier 2. I think the deck has a lot of like things going for it. Like it has a lot of really great pros and cons, but at the end of the day, it's I don't know. Sometimes it still feels weirdly. It still feels bricky to me, even though it has Gil X. It still feels weirdly bricky sometimes. And like I said, the immunity feels very fake.
Yeah. But I guess again, pseudo immunity is better than no immunity. I
Yeah,
think deck that fits into tier 2, as you can see, in your tier list, Dorogora has anti-deletion effect as well. You can go into
yeah,
decks. Magna has full immunity. Imperial has partition. I think
yeah,
these are decks to take note of, so that players that wants to be competitive needs to understand the value of the card.
yeah.
And I think for Gallantmon itself being a favorite, main characters, Digimon. I have a friend, I mean, which is with Boris Group, Dotex. He's been playing Digimon ever since I know him. He started to shift a bit, but he's coming back now. Here is still, I think with Digimon X coming to play, the pseudo immunity does help, but again, the glaring weakness here is that when you play an option, back then against Purple
Yeah.
Hybrid, you can just warring shot and that's the end. And
Yeah.
and most players are not playing proto form; they are playing more of the old XND body because they want to be quicker in pushing through the security.
Yeah.
But again, here you need to be very careful in terms of Takato as a tamer. There are plays that they can do where they are able to just digivolve, and bleeds, and then go into the using a Crimson Moon to trash a security and end the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could if you are not careful about things. So again, here strong deck, able to control the board with minus, as I said, DP, but also potential of a lot more strength because there are new additions of cards coming up in BT21 as well, adding into the deck list. So again, I'll put this in tier 2.
Yeah.
Maybe if I were to rearrange it, I think it would be RP, Leviamon, Imperial, and then Magnamon X followed by
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And yeah, it's probably something like that. Okay. Tyrant. You told me to add Tyrant to the list, and I thought about it, and I was like, wait, Tyrant sounds actually pretty good because like you have Shivamon, you turn off the Sakuya, they can't ever activate an option, and then like versus Royal Knights, they can never remove you, and I was like, wait, that actually sounds really good. And then like we tried it, and then it turns out you're too slow to get everything up. So sometimes Sakuyamon just outpaces you and then just smacks you in the head with Volder, and you're like, okay, well that wasn't great. And then versus Royal Knight, it turns out maintaining 17,000 DP is a lot harder than you imagine consistently, right? Because of Omni X plus Last Guardian. So when I thought Tyrant was decent, it got worse and worse as I kept playing it. And I was like, oh, I was like, being unable to cheat into your evolution just feels really bad. So,
Okay.
unfortunately,
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
The cheerful bin. Yeah. I guess Tyrant is always one of those decks that, back then where we were also trying to establish the competitive landscape. It's one of those decks that we always try to figure out how to play around it, and because of the immunity on the board that it has when it's suspended, and not a lot of decks can interact with the high DP as well. So it was always on our watch list in terms of who to play because you never want to lose to one or two random tyrants, in matchup. So I wanted to include that in the list because I still find that it has some, I would say, I mean, like you said, it's not fast, but I think once things get going, and if you look at the top tier deck, right, they don't play a lot of options. Yeah, except for Sakuyamon X, or
Leviamon. Yeah, Leviamon.
Yeah. So in terms of the interactivity with the board, it's quite minimal. Yeah. So sometimes it can be very hard to deal with a tyrant board. Once you have one setup and you can't kill it, you'll be sure that you'll be getting it will be suspending every turn and trying to make another line up. And I think right now, with Shiva Ace, I think I recall there was one match that happened during the Thailand Asia regional finals, right, where a Shiva Mon actually just hard locks a Sakuya Taloop bot from there. Yeah. And they can't do anything. And back then I think Taloop was still a popular choice. So in fact I think this could happen, to some of the matchup that he's facing.
Yeah.
So in that case I think it is one of those surprise deck that I think might take you by take a few wins from there. So I'll put it at closer to the tail end of 3, just in front of Anga. Just in front of Anga.
Yeah, I agree. Like if you get the Shiva lock up versus Sakuya, there's not they literally can't play the game. It's over for them.
Yes.
But the issue is getting there.
Yes, getting there.
Yeah. All right, Omni. Omni is another deck that you also mentioned that you wanted to add on.
Yep.
This Omni I actually think is really interesting because you have access to a Mecha plus Omni X combo now, and then Omni X obviously can go over your Omni Ace, which is really cool. But at the end of the day, I don't think it fixes the core issues of the deck, which is like once you bait out the Omni Ace, if you can remove it, then the game is over. And then also like you still have like some consistency issues as well. But I do think the Omni X is a really great addition. So for me, I also think this is like a deck that's very difficult for a lot of newer players to play around because you look at it, you look at Miraculous Knight plus Omni Ace combo, and you're like, how do I ever beat this?
Yep.
So for me, I think it's like bottom of tier 3 with new Omni X Omeka. Like I think it's a really great additions, but I think it's like not enough. Which I think some of my friends are gonna yell at me for that one. They're gonna be like, why is Phoenixmon down here and Omni Ace is down here or up here? To which I tell them, you should have made your own video.
Yeah. I think Slicks brought this deck into the Ultimate Cup today, and I think there are some strengths and weaknesses in this deck. I think we do see that there is the Miraculous Mega Knight option, which is such a great card to get into your Omnimon, much more easier, and to make sure that you still maintain control of the board. With I think MetaGarurumon is able to freeze the board.
Yeah.
Is that BT14?
15.
Yeah, MetaGaru.
It's
15.
15
Garu. Yeah. So I think the freeze mechanic is strong. I think in the current meta, even I realized that Blue Flare is missing here, but I think Blue Flare does have a Blue Flare does has a fair bit of chance. If you look at the current tiers, right, they're all building the boards kind of wide. And sometimes you might and once they get it freeze up, there's very little they can do.
Yeah.
If your opponents go into rune mode, you freeze them, I think that's it. They hardly can. But again here, we are looking at consistency, right?
Yeah.
Although they have options to, they have memory boost, they have Agumons, to search the tamers that tie. I guess there might be a few flaws in terms of building up momentum to it. But once things get going, or once you go into the Omnimon, in fact, I think when you mentioned about Omega and Omega X, it's actually interesting to have that added into the deck here because, again, here the deck suffers when it's falling behind. Yeah. So there's not much comeback factor. I think with that, it might be able to solve the issue. Same goes for like Magnamon X as well. But I have never seen that play. So, but I thought to include this because, I just recently ordered the P Bandai binder for the Omega. So it looks really cool. It looks really cool to form a deck with all those flashy, alternate arts from there. But for me, it sits at a tier 3 towards, just before GigaSeadramon.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last deck, because I forgot Chronicle and Blue Flare. Whoops, my bad. Excel, right? Excel, very easy deck to pick up. Very straightforward. It does one thing, and it does the one thing very well. I think Excel is just so bricky though, and because the egg is green and the rest of your deck is yellow, it's like why would you do this?
Correct. That was the question that we were getting. Why was the egg green? And then I can't use my yellow memory boost,
right.
And it just sucks. And like you said, but I think when you have that perfect line, and with the partition from the Chaosmon Valorant, it's such a strong board. And it's so hard to interact, especially when the partition comes up with the Leopardmon to de-Digivolve and with the bird to actually rest all the Digimon. I think the Leopardmon is the key here. When because de-Digivolve effect is such a strong mechanics, I always believe that it has always been the Black's best, interaction with the board, and not many Digimon can counter that. So I guess once this is going, it's good, but like you said, I don't know why why the egg is green color, and sometimes when you don't draw to your outs, you just are struggling to even control the board back. You're just trying to hard cast, but you don't have the memory to even play such cards from there. Still, I'll put it at a tier 3, maybe closer to after Domini.
Man, you are very generous. Yeah, I this not being yellow egg, I think this deck is bad.
Oh my. Yeah. Because I've seen some players have success with that. Yeah. They also choose to play a Cherubi Ace as the top line for level 6 as well.
Yeah.
To allow you to play more of your level 4s, so that you can go up to another line. And again, you have partition effect from Valorant if you were to combine it with any of the level 6 there.
Yeah, because like for me, it's like I had the combo resolved on me turn 2, and he got a lot of my security, and then I removed the Valder, and then I removed one of the 6s, and then he just looked at me and he was like, "Oh, I can't do anything now. Next turn." I was like, oh, "Okay, cool. Good talk."
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the deck is cool, and when it goes off really hard. But it's just like how often it goes off. It doesn't go off very often. So
Yeah, and I think Singularity is a card that does help with the deck. But again,
yeah,
if you draw that card without your level 6, I think that card is a dead card by the end of the day.
yeah. Okay, so really quick, where would you hypothetically put Chronicle on the tier list?
Chronicle. After playtesting it, sadly to say, it's at the tier 4 for me.
Okay, let's put the text on the screen.
Yeah,
Chronicle. Okay, and then yeah, for me it's also tier
tier
4.
4. You have a lot of tier 4s, by the way.
I'm a hater. I hate. Okay, and then where would you put Blue Flare?
Actually, Blue Fair's, I think Blue Fair has quite a bit of good matchup against the top tier, and I think I'll put it at tier 3.
Okay. Okay. For me, I agree. I think it's also tier 3.
Yeah, and don't forget, Blue Fair have access now to Omega X as well. So
Yeah.
there could be some, insane play where they can just, fight check you, and same goes for like the Omni Blitz. Just that with Omega
Yeah.
X, you have a bit more contingency in terms of bottom decking another blocker as such from there, or another ace target just in case.
Yeah, my issue with Blue Flare was Psychmon is still very difficult to get rid of. You have to resort to some like Forbidden Trident
Yeah,
or the level 4 Fishbird. So there's some
yeah,
or Seedra X whatever. So you have to
yeah,
resort to some really weird stuff to get rid of it. And that's asking for a lot, I feel like, because you're not running regular Mem Boost, you're running Blazing, so it's not searchable either.
yeah,
And then it feels weirdly clunky. Like I don't,
yeah.
I don't, cause like when you don't open new Kiriha, new Metal Gray doesn't feel that good.
Mm. But
So
but also, if you take a look at the meta, there's
yeah,
not much tech decks that are playing cost reduction Digimons like Psyche.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's only
mhm.
a couple.
I feel like at the same time, if you decks can easily fit in those cost reduction blockers, because like for example, like Imperial can fit in Otama. A lot of these red decks can run Solar or whatever, right? And then purple, they have access to Psych. Like we haven't needed to add it before, but now with Royal Knight being so dominant in the format, I think
Mm, that's true.
we'll see a push for it, right? Into
Yeah,
in a lot of decks. So I think once that happens, then Blue Flare will suffer a lot more.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mhm.
So that's a tier 4 for you.
No, tier three, tier three, tier three, tier three.
Tier 3. Still tier 3. Okay.
Oh yeah, okay. So that is all the decks. I think maybe we missed like one or two, but it's good enough. It's a 2 hour long video already. Um,
Oh wow.
Yeah, right. But I just want to say thank you so much, Robin, for coming onto the video and doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I know it's very late over there for you. So thank you very much. And I really enjoyed talking to you, kind of getting your perspective on like the Eastern player mentality, like how you see certain things. So really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again, Huang, for inviting me. I think he was invited on a short notice, and I do enjoy sharing this content. I think having more information is key. I think
Yeah.
as we move into unification, right, we would also want I mean, honestly, for us, we want to get more excited about the game.
Yeah.
Get more people interested, get more people maybe moving to deck building skills, like what we've seen in Worlds, and what Kurova has done with
Hmm.
Sakuya deck. And again, playing Digimon as you like it. Yeah, don't play Digimon for the meta. I mean, me and Huang sharing here are just our knowledge about the game.
Hmm.
But if you have you have a certain sentiments towards certain deck, then feel free to prove us wrong. I think that's
Yeah.
where we want to see, and we hope that you guys made it, and then we can talk about it from there.
Okay, so thank you so much to everyone. If you've stuck around to the video for this long, kudos to you. Really appreciate it. And if you skip to the end to just get the tier list, that's also okay. No problems there. But thank you all so much for watching the video. I really hope that this kind of helps bridge together the East and the West, so that way we can all enjoy Digica together. So thank you all very much, and take it easy.
Thank you.